Alex made his way through the crowd of half-naked girls and guys dressed in crazy outfits, frantically twitching to the beat of the music under multicolored flashes of lights. He wondered what his platoon mates would say if they saw these golden youths. It was unlikely that they would defend them. However, Alex was not here to judge rich snobs. "Where's that girl?" Carelessly grabbing the arm of the nearest guy with colorful hair, he tried to calm him down. "Stay out of this, puppy," the guy broke free. "Hey, what are you doing? It hurts." She and the three guys had gone outside 5 minutes ago, leaving the parrot to rub his bruised arm. Alex rushed to the back door, ignoring the guard blocking the way. "Get out of the way." Pushing him away, he ran out into the courtyard and looked around. One of the cars in the parking lot looked suspicious to him. He jumped to it and opened the door. 2 men were holding a girl of about 18. The third was already reaching for her with unambiguous intentions. Alex pulled him away with one powerful jerk, simultaneously striking him in the jaw. The remaining 2 shouted, threatening and cursing. When they saw the weapon, however, they were silent. "She's coming with me," Alex said unequivocally. "Hey, that's not how it works," one of the guys tried to object. She agreed. "Who the hell are you?" "And now she's changed her mind," Alex pulled the drunk girl, who was starting to come to her senses, out of the car, sending her behind his back. "Brian will be very unhappy if you treat his daughter badly. Do you want to stay?" The boys looked at each other. That name seemed to say a lot to them. "I'm sorry, sir," one of them said in a different, ingratiating tone. "We didn't know. We're new to LA, so we don't know everyone by sight. And it's a big city." Besides, the girl made it clear she didn't mind. "Ignorance of the law doesn't exempt you from responsibility," Alex muttered. "Respected Brian doesn't need to know about this misunderstanding," his interlocutor clarified. Alex nodded, lowering the gun. Adriana could really provoke hot guys with her behavior, being sure of her father's boundless power. I wonder at what point she was going to open her eyes. What if they wouldn't believe him? Or if he wouldn't have had the time? Picking up the girl's helpless body in his arms, he went back, bypassing to the abandoned car, loaded his ward on the back seat, and got behind the wheel. Yes, this was not what Alex had expected, taking a job with his former colleague. And now local authority Bren. In the army everything was different, clearer and simpler. Who was a friend now? Who was a stranger? The world had changed. Alex couldn't adapt. There were 2 roads open to men like him, either to security guards or to gangsters. He chose the third, became a driver for a local millionaire and a babysitter for his crazy daughter. And the daughter, Brian, who grew up without a father in poverty, did not want a soul and was ready to throw the whole world at her feet. After the death of her mother, he lost his head. Brian realized that the daughter his main weak point, so he provided the most reliable protection, putting her friend with combat experience in hot spots. But Adriana was going more and more off the rails, so Alex was ready to leave everything 100 times. But each time Brian managed to talk him out of it. "Where are we going?" came the girl's hoarse voice from the back seat. The rearview mirror reflected her disheveled hair, her makeup dripping, and she was turning back. The time was still childish. "That's it. No more adventures for today." Alex cut Alex off, glaring disapprovingly at his ward. "Your business is servility. Drive where they tell you to drive," the ugly girl started. "You are not my mistress," Alex answered gloomily. It was not the first attempt to hurt him, and not once had she managed to hurt his ego, even a little. "And I'll tell my father that you molested me," she giggled drunkenly. "I don't even need you sober," Alex waved her away. "Shall I take you home, or shall we go for a ride until the hangover wears off?" "You can't go home," apparently. The girl still had some remnants of reason. "Let's go for a ride. I won't fall asleep so early anyway." The unexpectedly peaceful tone could not deceive him. That echidna could be expected at any moment, but don't be the first to break the shaky truce. "Why did you go to them?" Alex asked, watching as she settled down on the back seat and tried to put her face and clothes in relative order. Boredom, Adriana dismissed, assessing the extent of the destruction. "Besides, they're so brutal, you know." "They're in over their heads," Alex grumbled. "There are so many hounds now, no laws, no authority." "Better them than the local colorblinds," Adriana said. "Do you have pills?" Alex stuck his hand into the glove compartment without looking and got a pack of pills and a bottle of mineral water. She managed to take a couple of sips and then sagged in half, and trying not to dirty the cabin, twisted all that she had managed to swallow. "There you go. Cleaning the car again," Alex grumbled. "If you don't know how to drink, don't drink." He stopped the car, went around and opened the door. Adriana jumped out and got down on all fours. She continued to vomit. Alex took the water, held up her long hair, brushed it away from her face. "Girl, you can't go any further." He gave her another drink, examined her critically, and offered, "Now in the car to the car wash. You can clean yourself up there." "Is there a mini laundry there?" she clarified. "That'll do. It is necessary to soothe this joker, to cleanse his stomach with dignity." Lana was looking for someone to blame. "They're stirring up all kinds of crap." "They didn't force it into you, did they?" Alex grinned, wiping the stains on the seat. "Why are you looking for someone to blame if you did it yourself?" "I didn't ask you to," the girl said proudly. Finishing tidying herself up, "I'm cold, and this whole thing stinks." "Yeah, your rich spiritual world," Alex quipped. However, it was not in his plans to wait for her to catch cold in wet clothes. Having restored the car to its relative cleanliness, he waved his head. "Get in." Adriana remained silent. Apparently, even she was uncomfortable now. At the gas station, the boy was tasked with shining the car. He took the girl to the store. After waiting for her to hide in the fitting room, he picked out a few t-shirts and jeans and tossed them to her. "Pick one." "Liz sucks. Came from over there. What am I? A sucker." "Then pay for the clothes yourself," Alex said. "What else? Men pay for girls like me," Adriana grumbled. "Let's wait for those men," Alex suggested. He desperately wanted coffee, or better yet, to sell this little shit to his daddy and finally go home. "Okay, I'll be patient," Adriana said from behind the curtain. "Let me take the clothes to the laundry." Alex handed her a bag. "Just throw them out and be done with it." The girl grumbled unhappily. "I'm not going to wear this anymore anyway." "Deal," Alex thought, knowing that if he did as she said, she would make a fuss, demanding to return her favorite dress. Especially this piece of cloth probably cost so much that he couldn't earn in 6 months. "I'm gonna go get some coffee." "Come on." "I'll pick out the least horrible one and join you," Adriana agreed easily, having decided that she could be left alone for a while. Alex handed the dress to the laundry and sat down at the table with a cup of coffee. Adriana really appeared about 10 minutes later, somehow very happy. "I want coffee," she declared, immediately moving the cup to her. "That's mine," Alex returned the cup. "I'll order one for myself now. Don't touch it." Adriana pouted exaggeratedly. "Here, throw it." "Naturally," she said. "I don't know where your lips have been." "Listen, you," Adriana, the girl, looked at him with an annihilating glare. "You're not going to get any. Dibs on me, dibs on me." Alex muttered, looking at the guard, who was walking purposefully towards them. "Is there a problem?" "Your companion has just committed a theft." The elderly guard was a little out of breath, but he was confident. "Adriana, what is he talking about?" Alex looked at the girl sternly. She took an offended look. "How should I know? He's senile. What could the old man be dreaming about?" "I could be." "She stole a blouse." The guard blushed, but he couldn't be confused. "Give it back. Or will we have to call the police?" "Don't call the police," Alex asked. She was just joking, wasn't she? Leaning towards the girl, he whispered in her ear. "Give it back now." Adriana glared, opened her mouth, then spat on the floor and pulled a rolled-up blouse out of her pocket. "Choke on it. It's a penny rag. And you've made $1 million worth of noise." "Excuse her." Alex snatched the shirt from the girl's hands, handed it to the guard. "You see, she's sick. This is Vanessa's case. It's a bad case. It's my fault for leaving her unattended. It's her shock after her mother died. We're on our way to see a psychiatrist right now." The guard looked at Alex carefully, but he managed to look so honest that it was hard to doubt it. "All right, we've forgotten. Since it's like this," the guard finally decided, "I sympathize with you, but keep an eye on her too. She'll go to the police, and they won't be able to deal with her." "Thank you for your understanding." Alex shoved a bill into his palm. He hesitated, but took it and walked away. When Alex looked at Adriana, she was smiling. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked quietly. "Don't you have enough for clothes or adrenaline? You don't know what you can't have. You eat and drink plenty, you've lived to a penny sweater. And you shut up," Adriana snapped at her. "Yes, now I'll call my father. His brothers will come and tear this almshouse to pieces." "He'll probably just put you under house arrest, and that'll be the end of it," Alex said tiredly. "I see you've come to your senses enough," Alex said. "Let's get your clothes and go home." Adriana raised her lips, but she did not pull out and silently followed the driver. The order was ready, but the dress was torn, and badly the designer turned around. Adriana's squeal made everyone turn around on her. "Your mother," screamed the girl. "You tore it. Where are your hands coming from?" "Come on, it's an exclusive. My father had it specially made in one piece." "So what are you staring at?" She turned to the receptionist. "Are you going to pay off a girl about my age now?" "You wanted to throw it away," Alex reminded her. "And it's not a fact that this hole wasn't already there when I took the dress to the laundry. It was intact," the receptionist sobbed. "I noticed it, but I was afraid to tell you. I hoped you wouldn't notice." "They're all crooks," Adriana said. "If you were honest, would you have hidden it?" "I was scared," the receptionist sobbed in her voice. "I thought you bandits. I'll be killed for this." "I'm not a bandit," Alex said, looking at the triumphant Adriana, and suddenly shouted. She took her stuff and, moving from here, made a show on the flat. Adriana covered her mouth and darted her eyes at Alex, grabbing her by the elbow. He dragged her outside and shoved her into the car. "And he said he wasn't a thug," the receptionist said, stunned. But of course he didn't hear that. Once in the back seat, Adriana became hysterical. She shrieked, spat, swore, accused Alex of all the deadly sins, even tried to get into his hair, after which he slowed down and promised to tie her up and make her travel in the trunk. She believed it because she was silent. Having delivered his ward to the house, Alex was about to drive to his place when a familiar voice called him. "Alex, hold up. I have to talk to you." On the threshold of the mansion stood the owner, as well as his employer, an old friend, Brian. "In person, Alex." "I'm back," said Brian. "What did she do this time?" Alex shrugged. It wasn't in his nature to snitch. "I'm going to find out." "So you'd better tell me," Brian said in that tone of voice, and it was useless to argue. It was better not to make him angry. "Stupid girl," Alex explained briefly. "Let's go for a drink," Brian suddenly suggested. "I'm driving," Alex was surprised. "So we'll have a little. Then someone will take you home. There's no one waiting there." "So there's no one to explain why you're late," Brian laughed. "But, Brian, it was the truth. Alex lived alone. It just happened. And after the war, something happened to him. He started screaming at night, jumping up and shooting. What woman could stand that? So he decided he was better off alone. He didn't even have a pet. If they shot him, there'd be no one to feel bad about it. My parents died early. No other relatives." With a wave of his hand, he gladly accepted the glass from Bryn's hands. "Here's to the boys." He proposed a toast to those who fought with them, who came back alive, and who stayed there. Then Alex took a swig of elite whiskey, took a snack. A pleasant warmth spilled inside. It had been a long time since he'd had a drink. He'd gotten used to it. Brian stared at him. "I don't understand why it's like this," he said. "We fought together in life, defending our country. You saved my life in battle. You had 3 wounds. I had a shrapnel wound. Wouldn't these present-day majors have gone? They wouldn't." Brian pounded his fist on the table. "What generation? They're pathetic. You wear them and they can't get enough. I'd give anything for her. And the bastard knows it. Then why does she keep coming after me?" "Maybe she lacks a normal father's love," Alex asked, realizing that he was stepping on a very dangerous topic. "I had no time to take her to the movies and feed her ice cream at the Croissant," Brian said. "It was either you or you. It still is." "That's not what I meant," Brian said. "I think they're going to take me out soon." "What's wrong with you?" Alex even got up from his seat. "You've got guards all around you, and you're not a little boy yourself." "Guards and shootings counted for a lot. New evil ones are coming. No principles. We're like a bone in their throat to old men like me, and that's the end of it. What will happen to my daughter then? My heart hurts for her, you know." "Well, let's send her to study in Europe," Alex suggested cautiously. He didn't like this strange conversation, though in his heart he realized that Brian was right. Many hunters walk the edge to take him away, to dishonor him. Brian looked at him hard. "I'm not much of a teacher. Maybe you'd be a better one." "What are you talking about?" Alex put aside the glass where Brian had generously poured more whiskey. "Take her away, Alex. Take her somewhere far away. I don't even know. Knock the shit out of her." Brian pounded his fist on the table. "What are you talking about?" Alex thought his friend was talking nonsense drunk, but he looked sober and suffering, like a sick dog. "Why beat him?" "I meant it in a figurative sense. Don't you dare lay a finger on me." Brian shifted his bushy eyebrows. "I've been through a lot of options. I even thought about the convent. but God wouldn't forgive me for that. She'd turned the convent into a shithole. Can you manage? I don't doubt you. I trust you. I'm sorry, but I won't sign up for that, Alex said firmly. This conversation is over. I need 8 hours of sleep. It's been quite a day. Mom, don't be sad. Let's have another round. Brian poured the rest of the whiskey into glasses. To the fact that our children in the other world lived according to their conscience, and that they earned money with their minds, not under bullets. Finishing the whiskey, Alex felt his brain fogging up. Fatigue had taken its toll. For him, who practically didn't drink, the dose was too much. Putting his head down on the table, he fell asleep right at the table. He could no longer hear Brian whispering, "I'm sorry, bro. I ain't got no other choice. You're gonna have kids of your own. You'll understand." It wasn't a pleasant awakening. My head was in pieces. Besides, someone was yelling in a woman's voice and shaking him by the chest. He sat up and finally opened his eyes. Where am I? He asked himself, wondering if he was awake. Exactly. Where did you bring me? The driver from Los Angeles was standing next to him, wearing the jeans and t-shirt he had bought yesterday. The girl looked little like a tourist from Miami in the fancy clothes he was used to seeing. I have no idea. Alex squeezed his temples with his palms. The last thing I remember is your father and I drinking whiskey. Now remember how you brought me here. Adriana tried to grab his collar again. In an instant, he swept her hands away and glared angrily at the girl. I'm not thinking straight with a hangover. I'd don't complain later if you walked in by accident. Adriana stopped talking and slumped back in her chair, staring at him. This was something she had never expected from a normally patient driver. Alex looked around the room and saw mineral water and pills on the table. Thank you. At least they didn't make me suffer from a hangover. When I come to my senses, you'll get credit for it, he grinned. He knew what whiskey did to me. You got what you wanted, Shelley and Sheva's thug spawn. I'm going to give you your treasure back, not babysit you. He looked at the seated girl. All right, nobody yells, nobody throws tantrums. Is that clear? Adriana nodded. By all accounts, your precious daddy got me drunk yesterday and instructed me to stick you in that hole with me. Adriana's eyes turned round, and at the last moment Alex took pity on her and told her a half-truth. He's got some serious problems coming up, so he put you away so that you, his most precious thing, wouldn't get hurt. You understand? But she didn't understand. The girl's used to getting everything she wants on demand, and now something had been decided against her will. She was about to open her mouth again, but Alex put his finger to her lips. Adriana silently looked at him with cat-like eyes, moving with the silent steps of the former scout. Alex stood up, stretched, walked to the window, looked out, surveyed the courtyard. Nobody seemed to be around. So he turned to Adriana. Look around the house, see if you can find anything useful. I'm going out to the yard to see how deep we're in. Without waiting for an answer, he went out into the hall, noting the presence of an axe, a scythe, a box of nails, and other useful tools. There was water splashing in the cellar. Aha! It was already half done. So there is a well. We won't be lost. But that was the end of positive thoughts. Alex silently looked at the ruined hut, looked at the world through the blind windows, at the abandoned front garden, where flowers unknown to him were living out their lives. Behind the house, there was an equally neglected vegetable garden. Let's hope that at least some food was left for them. They wouldn't leave their own child to starve to death, he muttered. He walked around the house and made sure there was no car. Brian's no fool. He knew I'd rush right back to return his precious cargo. Yeah, they took your cell phone too, but you guys are pissing me off. I'm going to take the case. It's going to be a real mess. Alex strolled through the village in a disgusted mood, though it was impossible to call this scattering of houses mostly boarded up a village. It seemed to him that a curtain in one hut shook, and he knocked and shouted, "Hey, masters, open up. I am a peaceful man. I want to ask a question." Some fumbling and whispering was heard behind the door. "I swear to God I won't hurt you," Alex added, absolutely convinced that the hut was inhabited. The door creaked open, and a nose and part of a wrinkled face peeked through. "There are only baked apples around," the old woman muttered. Alex smiled carefully and took a step back. The door opened wider, and an ancient old woman, looking like a dandelion, appeared to him. Small, thin, wrapped, despite the summer, in a downy shawl. "You're not lying, my dear man," she suddenly declared. "How peaceful you are. If in the middle of the night the real bandits brought you in black cars, unloaded you and ran away. So it turns out that they are bandits." Alex happily grasped the idea, and I'm the victim. "So what do they want from you?" The old woman gasped. So they'll come back and kill us all. I don't think so, Alex objected. I'm not that easy to deal with. Grandma, believe me. I do, Grandma agreed easily. And the girl with you, who will she be? Your mistress or your daughter? Alex pondered and decided that the second option would be preferable. Daughter, he nodded. I'm raising her alone. Her mother died. The girl's not herself, sort of. Tears rolled from the old woman's eyes. She turned to the door. Deborah, come out. He's not a bandit. He was hurt by bandits. The door opened again, letting in a second old woman, just as small. But unlike her friend, she was round and very determined. She was holding a hammer. Alex almost laughed, looking at the belligerent grandmother, but raised his hands up, showing that he surrendered. Are you very gullible? Like a child, Deborah said, scrutinizing Alex from head to toe. Maybe he's lying, but maybe he's lying. What if he wants to steal from us? The old woman laughed. What's there to take? We don't keep anything. The guests are coming. Let's at least give them some tea. Deborah tightened her already narrow lips, but couldn't find anything to object. Alex, afraid of hitting his head, entered the hut and looked around. Yes, the poverty here was overwhelming. Portraits were the main decoration of the house. Carefully protected from dust, male, female, children's, they almost solidly covered the wall under the wallpaper. Apparently, it seemed to the old women that the whole family was with them, and their own loneliness did not seem so terrible to them. Tell me you're not a bandit, Deborah ordered. Alex looked around, saw the icon in the red corner, and crossed himself. He wasn't lying. I drove the bandit on official business, and more often than not it was not him, but his bound daughter. Deborah was not, and would never be like that. No matter how much trouble fate threw his way, Deborah, satisfied with this proof, changed her anger for mercy and began to work, gathering the table. Alex sniffed. The smell seemed familiar, desperately current with mint, the way his grandmother used to make tea. It seemed like 100 years ago, and the smell remained in his memory. The tea was served with gingerbread, stale even in appearance. Add them to the tea, and it will be good, the old woman suggested, sitting the guest down at the table. Alex dipped the gingerbread into the tea. He took a bite carefully, and, deciding to save his teeth, slowly put it back on a saucer. Can you at least tell me where I am? He stared questioningly at the owners of the hut. The village of Gavrilovo, my dear, Deborah eagerly informed him. Pskov region. It's about 100 kilometers to the nearest town, so you could say we live in the very backyards. That's how it is. Alex stretched out. He was a friend of this bandit, and he didn't spare his own daughter. I wonder how she didn't manage to do anything while he was away. Now it was necessary to learn more about ways to contact the outside world. There are buses, I suppose, he clarified. The women looked at each other and laughed. Who would go here? It's a wilderness. No one would burn gasoline because of two women. Maybe the children visit, Alex continued to inquire. There's a worm in the coffin, Deborah answered. Who needs us, old people? Our children are already over 60. They have settled down in the city. They have warm water from the tap. Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren don't need us at all. The house has fallen apart. It's no good for a summer cottage. It's hard to come here. Pity stirred in Alex's heart. He would get out of here sooner or later, and the grandmothers to live here. What about the pension? He grasped at the last thread. Or did they transfer it to your card? The grandmothers looked at each other and laughed. We've never seen anything but playing cards. They bring you a pension if the road is good. And even then, it's not every month. You're just unlucky, sweetheart. There was a letter carrier a week ago. Deborah elbowed her friend in the side, suggesting that she keep quiet. Only if you're trying to get your hands on our pension, you're doing it in vain, Deborah said sternly, flaming Alex with a glare. The head of the post office, Ryabchikov. The letter carrier and I agree on what to buy with our pennies. He brings not money, but groceries. There's no need for money in our backwoods. Alex put his hand on his heart and looked at the two stern old women in turn. I swear to Christ, I don't need your money. I need to get out of here. And how will you get out of here, my dear? The grannies were surprised. Are you going to walk to the road? It's through the forest. And you city dwellers are probably not used to such a thing, are you? Besides, our forests are remote. It's easy to get lost, and you're with your daughter. What daughter? Alex almost asked again, but he came to his senses in time. I should go back and look after the girl, or she might not tear the whole house down with anger. Thanks for the food. He got up from the table. I'll get settled in, since it's the lot. If you need any help, call me, I'll help you. Thank you, Deborah nodded. The man sees the work himself. He doesn't need a pointer. It's a deal, the old woman added snidely. I'll keep it in mind. Alex didn't give in to the provocation and went out carefully. He approached the hut, allocated to him by kind old ladies for housing. He approached cautiously. He could expect anything from a nasty girl, from hysterics to arson. But everything seemed to be quiet. Alex looked through the window and saw a different picture. Adriana was lying on the bed reading a book. It was unknown where she had gotten it, but the fact itself pleased him. She wasn't hysterical. She hadn't broken any dishes. She was being a good girl. He was wrong, and he was sure of it as soon as he entered the house. The book flew right into his face. Good, his reaction didn't fail. He intercepted the book, turned it around, looked at the title. Don't throw away cultural heritage, he said sternly to the girl, who rolled off the bed and started beating him with her fists. Take me home, Adriana yelled. Get out of this now. Or what? Alex asked. He even felt funny, because the cheerful girl resembled an angry cat now. I'll complain to my father. He'll cut you to ribbons, his ward, Adriana squealed. Actually, it was his initiative that brought us here, Alex reminded, for your own safety, for a moment. But Adriana was eager for revenge, and it was not easy to stop her. When they take me home, I'll tell them you kept me hungry, beat me, and raped me, she said, glaring angrily at Alex. Bang, a white hand clamped over her mouth. The girl fell silent, looking at him with widened eyes. So, that's it, Alex said slowly, leaning toward her. I hope you're not as stupid as you pretend to be. The first thing that prevents me from realizing everything you just said. The girl's big eyes got really big. It seemed that she was beginning to believe. The second thing, Alex continued calmly, I've never taken any woman by force in my life. I wasn't brought up that way, and there was no need for that. I'm not a freak, not a moron. It's not a problem for me to find a girlfriend, and I wouldn't be interested in a trash like you, even if you were the only one left in the whole world. Is that clear? Adriana nodded. Get it? It made him laugh. You're an ill-mannered fool, used to having everything in life at the snap of a finger, and now it turns out that the world does not revolve around her alone. If she understood, he let Adriana go. She nodded, not stopping to look at him sneakily. Is there anything you want to say or ask? Alex asked. She nodded again. Outlean it, he suggested, expecting anything from tears to aggression. The first statement contradicts the second one, Adriana said, looking him in the eyes defiantly. What? Alex was stunned. So, theoretically, you are considering the possibility of taking me by force, if you can realize what I said, she said. Alex thought and laughed. Gotcha. You're a logical person. So I'm studying law, she said calmly. Aha, thanks to her father's money. I'm still not expelled for truancy, Alex laughed. Adriana blushed slightly. Are you a hoarder? Alex inquired, turning the conversation to other rails. Do we have a lot of supplies? Adriana shrugged. Can we sit out a nuclear war? Oh, let's not do that, Alex objected. But his mood had improved. And where is all this wealth? Adriana lifted the lid of the hatch covering the crawlway. There are boxes, canned food, bread, cereals, tea, coffee. The other thing is alcohol. Not a drop. Bastards. Alex had conflicting feelings. On the one hand, Adriana wasn't afraid to go into the cellar. That's a plus for her. On the other hand, this talk of alcohol was unpleasant for him. Alex jumped into the cellar, bypassing the ladder. What if it collapsed under his weight? At once another thought came to him. What if the girl thought of slamming the lid? But he dismissed the thought immediately. She's not completely stupid. She realizes that she can't get out of here alone. Here he began to give her canned goods and cereal bags, a jar of coffee and a package of tea. We should treat the old ladies, Adriana decided in passing. It's okay. They won't be poor. Grandma could barely pull herself up on her hands. She crawled out from under the floor, looking approvingly at the supplies. We'll live, declared Alex, gloomily looking at all this splendor of the girl. Can you cook? And me? Adriana's face looked as amazed as if he had asked her to tap dance. Do I need it? Too bad, it would be very useful now. Alex sighed. I didn't expect a different answer. The present generation eats in bars and restaurants. Why do they need to cook porridge? There are always specially trained people. They'll cook it. Feed it from a spoon, everyone will come running and wipe their lips. But then I'm sorry. I'll cook it the way I know how. Adriana crossed her arms over her chest, giving him free rein. Hey, don't you want to clean up the house? Alex asked her. The answer was a haughty silence. Alex got angry. Well, friend, then we'll have communism. Who doesn't work, doesn't eat, he proclaimed, looking for a suitable utensil. Here's the ambush. Alex looked around the room, puzzled. Are you looking for a stove? We'll have to melt it. He doesn't know how to do that. We'll have to cook porridge on the fire. I don't take a master class in stove heating from grandmothers. Well, that's for later. He was starving. I'll make a camp hearth. Attach the pots to the wire, Alex decided. Soon wood crackled cheerfully and smelled of smoke. He added millet and stew. Delightful. A couple of times he noticed that Adriana was watching him. Hungry, of course, but he's not going to let her do that. Otherwise, she'd sit on his neck and dangle her legs again until he fed her some delicious porridge. Alex washed his spoon and went to inspect the household. The hut, which had fallen on the head of the household, had reached the end of its life. However, the floor was not rotten, the roof did not leak. The latrine was found here in the yard, and in relative order. There was a well nearby, and he was glad to draw a full bucket of tasty, cold water. Several times he filled the barrel to the top, let it bask in the sun. It would be useful for washing and laundry. Potatoes were found in the feral vegetable garden. Apparently, it hadn't been dug for years. Some of the crop had rotted away, but some had sprouted again, providing him with food. Onions grew nearby, and in the grass he found strawberries, also grown without care, but no less sweet. He ate a few berries with pleasure, laughing to himself, but no way. Fatter lip, thinner belly. When he returned, he found Adriana greedily eating porridge straight from the pot. He laughed a long time, looking at her smeared face. You're like a savage, he grinned. What's the penalty for stealing? Remember. Remember. You have to feed me, Adriana said. I'll tell Daddy. I don't have to be your housekeeper, Alex said. If we're both in trouble, we have to do it equally. What's not to understand? I wasn't hired to be your housekeeper, snapped at the offended Adriana. I'll run away. You'll know. Run, Alex gestured at the forest. If you want to diversify the menu of local fauna, who am I to object? Adriana poked her spoon into the pot, looking longingly at the porridge that Alex was demonstratively putting on the table. Alex broke away from the fascinating activity and asked, What? Is it broken in two? If you can't broom the floor or help with household chores, you're not a cripple. Adriana was silent. Your father didn't shy away from it when we were in the service, Alex continued. And besides, he was never a baron. You served together, Adriana suddenly asked. Yes, I know, he told me. It happened, Alex answered uncertainly. Yes, we served together and fought together. What was he like in the war? The girl asked quietly. Alex looked at her carefully. No teasing. He looked at her seriously. He was reckless, he said honestly, thinking, where others would think 100 times before entering. He was the first to get into a fight. Once, he went to rescue the guys who had been captured. Almost got himself killed. He knew he was going to certain death. Still, he didn't back down. Did you get him out? She asked. If you know about that too, why are you asking? Alex got a little angry. The girl stared at him without taking her eyes off him. My father said you were a hero. Then why are you in someone else's car? Isn't there any other occupation for a hero? Why not to become a bandit, for example? Alex decided to cut this conversation short. And I was satisfied with driving cars, but my conscience is clear. I can live with it. The girl fell silent, thinking something over. Then she got up and went into the house. Alex wondered what she was doing. He peered cautiously through the window. Adriana was sweeping the floor. He hummed, giving her time to finish cleaning before he went into the hut. Silently, he took a few cans of stew, added tea and cookies, and asked, Will you come to visit with me? There are 2 old ladies living in the neighborhood. They could use some help, because they have become quite poor. Sure aware to do charity, Adriana said snidely. Once again, her bad temper got the best of her. I remembered my grandmother, and I didn't fall for it, Alex said. If she were to live in the middle of nowhere like this, I'd like someone to bring her a decent cup of tea. Adriana, returning her nose, thought, Let's go. There's nothing to do anyway. But here's the thing. Alex hesitated a little. I said you're my daughter. What? Adriana asked with her mouth hanging open. From what gingerbread? And who was I supposed to call you? Alex flared up. A mistress. They wouldn't approve of that. Do we care? Adriana was genuinely surprised. There's no telling how long we'll stay here. Alex said sternly. I don't know what kind of help we'll need. I don't know how to heat a stove. And if there is adultery? They won't help. Adriana thought and agreed. Okay, I understand. I promise to be a good girl. She shot Alex a playful look. Stop it, he exclaimed. What the hell is going on in your head? Even I have no idea what kind of danger your father hid you here from. No communication with the outside world, and you're thinking nonsense. Oh, come on, Adriana stuck out her capricious lip. There's no danger there. It's educational. Daddy's just trying to scare me, that's all. Does she know what she's doing? Alex was surprised. In fact, that was the case. But for some reason, Brian's phrase about his time running out and being replaced by the young and frisky ones was firmly lodged in his brain. As far as he knew, his ex-army buddy was not an overreactor. Let's stick to my version. That bandits threw us here, Alex suggested. Why would they do that? What do they want? Adriana immediately joined in. Alex shrugged. I didn't think out the details, let's say to take possession of the property. Then they would shoot us and that would be the end of it. Adriana disagreed. So we're needed alive for some reason. They would keep us in the basement and torture us, Alex suggested. If you can't lie, don't do it, Adriana finished him. Offer it yourself then. Alex got angry. Adriana thought for a second and then said, Version, the best lie is a half-truth. Let's say we're here hiding from a gang fight. You're a friend of the mob boss. So he decided to hide his inner circle in the middle of nowhere. Just like in the movies. Alex grumbled. Your version is even worse, said Adriana. And the dough was fine. The old ladies really took the girl's story at face value. Even the suspicious Deborah did not cling. In addition, they were largely bought off by the gifts. The grandmothers blossomed when they tasted real tea instead of the usual herbal tea. Adriana kept herself modest, asking about the people in the portraits, which finally won the hearts of the old women. They were so emotional that they went into the closet and gave Adriana a lot of old-fashioned blouses and dresses. Surprisingly, the nasty girl was happy and thankful. Alex was dragged out of the house while they were trying on dresses, and he wasted no time in fixing the fence and fetching more water. When he returned to the hut, he was stunned to see an unfamiliar girl in a polka-dot dress with a laid-back collar. Only then he realized who it could be. What a beauty you have, Mia, the old ladies were saying in duet, and blushing themselves on such an occasion. Mia, who is that? Alex almost blurted out, realizing almost immediately that Adriana was a fancy abbreviation for a normal name. The girl was sitting there, 6 feet tall, pensive, unaccustomed to silence. Alex had time to think what insidious plans she was hatching, but the genuine joy of the grandmothers distracted him from these thoughts. Let's go to heat the stove. Deborah got up from the table with an important look and headed for the exit. In the end, they all went together. Curious Kimberly couldn't miss this kind of entertainment. By that time, Alex already knew that they were not sisters, but neighbors. It's just not so boring to spend time together, and it's cheaper. Under the watchful eye, Alex chopped wood, choosing the dry ones, mentally thanking the owners for their caution, for the remnants of lumber. And soon the old ladies were happy to start the fire and instructed how to move the flap in and out of the fireplace so as not to get burned inadvertently. The house became cozier. The hut got a residential look. I moved in with Morgan a year ago, Kimberly sighed, pointing to the portrait of a woman with a stern face. Until the last time she did it all by herself, Kimberly sighed, pointing to the portrait of the woman with the stern face. We'll try to keep things tidy, Alex nodded. Thanks for the shelter. Grandma Morgan jabbed her finger at him. It was obvious that she wanted to be sarcastic, but she didn't. Adriana's girl was unusually quiet and thoughtful. Alex gave her the bed, settled down on the stove, and fell asleep. He was awakened by strange sounds. When he listened, he realized that Adriana was crying on her pillow. Hey, what are you doing? Alex called out quietly, so as not to scare her. In his mind, he was hurling foul words at Brian for his parenting techniques. He dragged him, Alex, into it. And he'd scared the girl. I'm scared, Adriana whispered, barely audible. So what is there to be afraid of? There's no one in the village but the 4 of us, Alex didn't understand. I'm afraid for my father, Naomi said. I feel that something bad is happening, and my heart hurts. Alex sat down next to her from the stove, awkwardly stroking her head. She was sobbing in her voice, not holding back her tears. An anxiety settled in Alex's heart. When Naomi fell asleep, he gave himself a promise to try to get out of this wilderness through the forest tomorrow. So through the woods. I'm not Little Red Riding Hood, let the local wolves be afraid of me. In the morning, he visited the old women again. He explained his interest by his desire to probe for bypass routes. But we can't sit around waiting for the bandits to come for us, and it wouldn't hurt to find out about hunting. We need variety in our rations. We'll run out of canned food sooner or later, and the old ladies have to wait a month for groceries from the letter carrier. Maybe not everyone believed him, but traditionally they gave him 2 rifles and a compass. My husband's inheritance, Patrick explained. The old man used to dabble in hunting. Deborah corrected him. He was a poacher. But we didn't go without meat. Deborah shook off the blow, and going into the hay, added more cartridges. Here, take it. We don't need it. Asking the old ladies to keep an eye on Vanessa, Alex went into the forest, following his grandmother's instructions. This is not the taiga. If you walk purposefully, you will definitely come to a road or, at the worst, to another settlement. And there, perhaps, there will be civilization. Alex has enough friends to get him out of exile. However, the forest did not end, distracting him with berries and mushrooms. So he couldn't resist and tied his technique in a knot and collected selected whites. Well, a negative result is also a result, Alex decided. Now I'll go back, hand over the supplies, and scour the forest in the other direction. With such thoughts, he turned back. He walked with a quick step along the left, marked signs, so the way back seemed shorter. Alex was already approaching the edge of the forest when he felt alarm and increased his pace. When he heard gunshots, he ran as fast as he could. A black car with unfamiliar license plates stood near the house. His heart jumped. Where is she? Quickly, he spilled the mushrooms out onto the grass. He fell down beside them, inhaling the damp aroma. A man appeared from the house, looked around, crouched on the porch with a cigarette. I see. Ambush. Where are the others? Where are they shooting from? As if in answer to this question, a shot rang out from the direction of another house where the old ladies lived. Alex turned a big hook, and hiding behind the trees, horns almost at the very village, he approached the house from the side of the vegetable gardens and saw an amazing picture. 3 healthy bandits lay down in the grass, not daring to get up, and the muzzle of a rifle sticking out of the window. I'll put the sun on the spot, came Kate's voice, but there was a different tone in it now. One of the bandits tried to lift his head. The bullet mowed down a daisy a few centimeters away from him. Ida babka. No kidding. Who do I tell? Stay where you are, threatened the belligerent old lady. Grandmothers, you misunderstand us. We are not to your liking. We need a bandit who kidnapped our boss's daughter, began to exhort one of those lying in the grass. You give him to us. We'll leave. Take pity on the girl. She's been through enough. You're lying, and Adriana's voice rang out. I don't know you. I'm not going anywhere with you. Get out of here. The bandits were talking quietly. The grandmother with the rifle did not seem to be a serious obstacle, but they remembered the saying that once a year a dry stick shoots. Beware of going up, Alex shouted. He rose silently, aiming his rifle at the back of their heads. He didn't know what made him change his mind at the last second. Turning the weapon over, he swung the butt of the rifle at the back of the head of one, then the other. The third turned around, and Alex recognized Stephen, Brian's driver. He'd been driving Brian almost single-handedly since Alex had been assigned to his frisky daughter. Stephen's face twisted into a grimace. He raised a hand in defense. The other 2 were lying unconscious. What's going on here? Alex said through gritted teeth, quickly tying the bandits' hands with their own belts. Brian's been kidnapped, Stephen said in a rapid voice. I drove you guys back, and when I got there was a total power struggle. They didn't care about the girl at first. Then they decided that she was an extra card in this arrangement, and they started on me. I did, Alex said through gritted teeth. I did. Stephen glared at him defiantly. I have a young wife and 2 sons, and you'd turn yourself in if you were threatened. Okay, it's clear. Alex looked towards the hut, where the last of the 4 was waiting. Let's go. We'll make a deal. Having once again made sure that the defeated enemies were securely fixed and were not going to regain consciousness, he twisted Stephen's arm and, putting him in front of him as a human shield, went to the porch. A duel, Stephen called out. Come out. We've got to talk. Let him drop the rifle, objected the bandit hiding in the house. She won't, said Alex. I'm a pretty good shot, too. You don't think I can take you 2 down? Keep haggling. Duel, Stephen swore indignantly. That wasn't part of his plan. But if you put us down, maybe I'll have time to shoot." "Calmly," Alex said. "Everything depends on fate. What's your interest in taking me down? Have you ever shot before?" Duell was silent, not lowering the muzzle of his gun. "I have," Alex continued. "There, in the war, I knew for sure that the enemy was being killed. And then I dreamed about them, the blood, and no soap could wash it off. Do you want to put such a burden on your conscience? You give me the girl." Duell threw him through his teeth. "And get the hell out of here." "I'm not giving the girl back," Alex continued in the same tone. "I promised her father I'd look after her. We were in the war together. There we learned to appreciate the word of honor." "You realize that she'll live only as long as she doesn't sign the papers," Duell said. "She's the heiress now. So what do you suggest?" Stephen asked after a moment's silence. "Will you go back? Say you're done? A girl accidentally bumped into me in a gunfight. That's where they buried me." Alex spoke slowly, as if weighing every word. "Maybe it's easier to really kill both you and the girl." As if consulting with himself, Duell spoke. "Finished?" "Yeah, and him. I don't want you and the broad to talk, or they might come to an agreement." Alex felt uneasy. He looked at the bandit. "What makes you think his name's Frank?" he pondered aloud. "Let's let them go," Stephen said, still silent. "I'll vouch for him. He can be trusted." "Will the others keep quiet too?" Duell asked, nodding toward the bandits. "Show me the grave," Alex suggested, like they were buried while they were unconscious. "A circus on a wire," Duell grinned. "I can't believe I'm doing this." Half an hour later, Stephen and Duell drove off in a car, loading the dead men into the car, raising dust clouds. Alex stood near a boulder with 2 shovels. "So I got to see my own grave alive," he joked lightly. "So you'll live a long time." A dry, wrinkled hand stroked his back. "Grandma Kate?" Alex asked, looking at the old woman with interest. "So, my dear, I'm not always like this," Kate answered with dignity. "It was. I was also eager to serve the country there, in the war, and learned. I even have a certificate." "What kind of war is that?" Alex tried to calculate, but the old woman stopped him. "Apparently there's enough war for everyone. Mine is over. Yours, I think, too. You've got a girl to raise. She's got a father to replace. Don't look so grown up. She's basically a child's child. Don't leave her. Alex, it's your cross to bear." "I won't." Alex nodded. "Who will cope with her with such a character? What do you want to do next?" "Seriously?" Kate asked. "Disappears," promised Alex said. "They got her new papers. I'll put her name on mine. So there are no more plans to become the daughter of the gangster Brian White Mia will be. How she lives her new life is up to both of us." "Come back." Grandma looked up with her eyes, colored by time, but still clear. "You will always be welcome here." "Of course we will," Alex promised. "Shall she cries?" Kate sighed. "Deborah's going to give her a Capello drop soon. She'll have to carry her father's grief in her heart for the rest of her life. Valerian won't help her." "I'll be with you," Alex said thoughtfully, looking at the stone. "Well, it's time for us to go. How do you feel about staying here? In any case, there's something to check if there are really bodies under that stone. Isn't that scary?" "I've been scarier," Kate shrugged. "Too late. On the run. The years are not the same. And it's not about us now. Power and money are being divided there. So go. Mushrooms, potatoes for the road. Eat up and go on your way." Alex returned to the house. Adriana was lying on the bed. Her shoulders were shaking. Kimberly sat on the bench next to her and said something to her in a gentle, unfamiliar voice. The sobs became less frequent. The girl was calming down. "Adriana," Alex called out to her. The girl turned her big, swollen face to him. "No, not Adriana anymore," she said quietly. "She died with her father. And Mia is alive." Alex said confidently, "You don't have to bury yourself. He would have wanted you to live happily ever after." It turns out that I didn't know anything about him. Big tears crawled down the girl's cheeks. "If I could have it all back, I would have done things differently. I'll tell you what he was like," Alex promised. "Don't," Mia answered. "Everything will fall into place sooner or later." Half an hour later, loaded with provisions, generously sharing supplies with the old women, both of them were already wandering through the forest thicket towards a completely new, unknown, even frightening life. They walked about 5 kilometers, and then the forest suddenly ended. They stood at the edge of the forest. Next to it lay a field overgrown with something yellow, and there below they could see a smooth ribbon of highway. Adriana looked at Alex. She had changed a lot in those few days, grown up. It was impossible to recognize her as an obnoxious little brat, used to achieve everything by shouting and whimsy. "What should I call you?" she asked quietly. Alex hesitated. It was not an easy question. "I understand you just lost your father. It will be hard for you to get used to it," he began. "Still, the easiest option is to call me father. You'll get less questions that way." "I can't call you dad." The girl flared up slightly and said, "Why not?" Alex was surprised. "It's necessary for the legend, so that nobody could find us out." I like you, you know, I like you," Mia choked with words. "I couldn't stand you before, but now I like you." "That's news." Alex grinned and scratched the back of his head. "And when did you manage to do it?" "Okay, let's go. Then we'll see who loves whom." "Fool," Mia stepped and went forward. Alex stopped and took the girl under her elbow. She turned sharply and kissed him on the lips. He choked. What a surprise. He didn't expect such a surprise. And then they walked together across the field to the highway, and each step took them further away from their former life. 6 months passed in the quiet village at the edge of the forest. Time flowed slowly, as if sparing the old women who waited there. They coped, supported each other, and they still waited impatiently for the letter carrier. Not so much because of the pension, but because of the groceries they had ordered and the opportunity to talk to a new person. "Is he coming?" Kate asked, putting her palm visor over her eyes. "It sounded like a car coming," Deborah confirmed. "Are the bandits after our souls? It's been so long." Kate gasped. "Well, we'll meet the guests. It'll be too much." And the determined old woman went to load her trusty rifle. The car stopped at the porch. The grandmothers lurked behind the closed door, peering cautiously out from behind the lowered curtain. Kate was the first to recognize the tall man, Alex. Mia came out of the car, ran onto the porch, banged on the door with her fists, and called out, "Open up, we have presents." "So they're okay," Kate sighed with relief. "Put the samovar on. What a celebration." On our street, Mia hugged the old ladies, and Alex kissed them both on the cheeks. He volunteered to fetch water. The first thing he did was not to go to the well, but sat down next to it, with his back against an old stone, and said, "Lord, thank you for changing my life so dramatically. I promise I won't let you down. I'll use this gift wisely, and I know how to keep my word." A husband threw his wife and child out on the street and went to his mistress. If only he knew what awaited him. Thursday evening in the apartment, located in one of the hundreds of ordinary residential high-rise buildings, again heated argument broke out. Elsa did not want to put up with the indifference of her husband and arranged an interrogation. "Yes, everything is fine with us," as he could, he fought back. "I'm just tired at work." Elsa was not satisfied with this answer. "Your job hasn't changed for 2 years, and you weren't tired before, and now all of a sudden you are." "Yeah, well, it's winter, it's cold. Vitamin D deficiency. You should take your family to the sea, and you'd have more energy." Instead of an answer, Elsa got only a familiar sour look on her face. "I have to repair the car, not to the sea. All I need now is to eat in peace." It's always like this. He has everything nice and calm. He went to work, came home, and dinner was ready. The child is dressed and washed. Sit quietly, eat, and do not even try to solve family problems. Elsa took her daughter in her arms and went to the bedroom, not forgetting to slam the door loudly. "Honey, go play. Mommy needs to talk to Aunt Vivian." Elsa let her daughter go to the floor and pointed at the toys. "Look who it is. It's your favorite horse." Her daughter happily ran after the horse, and Elsa grabbed her phone from the dresser and dialed a message to her friend. "We had another fight. He won't even hear me. He says, 'Let me eat in peace, asshole.'" The reply came back a few minutes later. "Are you fighting again? Elsa, he doesn't appreciate you anymore. Have you thought about doing something about it? What can you do about it?" Elsa wrote, "Well, I'd go away for a couple days. Let him miss me first." That's a good idea, Elsa thought. But there's one problem, Maggie, the daughter, has no one to leave her with. And of course she can't be left at home with a busy husband. "Why, Vivian, can't you take her with you?" "That's a problem," replied her friend. "Really, why should a daughter be an obstacle to taking a break from her husband? and maybe even show him that she would not be tied to the house and sit to suffer. And then Elsa began to have a plan. Eugene, Vivian and I are going away for 2 days. I want a vacation with a friend. We'll stay in Miami, she said. Eugene got off the phone. Don't you have anything else to do? What, Miami in winter? The weather forecast is bad. They say it's 25 degrees and I need warmth and fresh air, Elsa insisted. Eugene nodded and went back to his smartphone, muttering something like, "Well, go if you have to. How are you going to make a meal alone?" Elsa was worried. "I'll buy food. I won't starve, don't worry." "Which friend are you going with?" "Maggie. You don't know her very well. She's a former coworker of mine." Eugene nodded briefly and didn't say another word. Elsa couldn't calm down, thinking the same thing. Why did he react so weakly? What's the matter? Elsa remembered how she and her husband had met. It had been 10 years ago. Eugene is the brother of her former best friend, Emily. The first time she saw her future husband, Elsa knew for sure that he was the man she wanted to be her life partner. He was a very tall, handsome, and tastefully dressed young man. The relationship developed quickly and beautifully. Eugene gave the most desirable gifts, called for dates to the best places in the city, and once they even flew to Paris. That evening in a hotel near the Louvre, Elsa remembered for the rest of her life. It was the first day in the city. They walked along the central streets, saw the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, and had breakfast in a bakery on the summer veranda. Then they checked into a hotel. They had only been dating for 6 months, so Elsa thought that this trip was just a pleasant weekend. But it turned out to be much more serious. "Will you marry me?" Eugene asked, and took out a black velvet box with a ring from his pocket. From surprise and joy, Elsa squealed, probably for the whole hotel. Yes, of course, yes. From that moment their family history began. And now, years later, the birth of their daughter Vivian, and many wonderful evenings together. He's changed. The constant delays at work, the aloofness and coldness, it all brought sad thoughts. "I don't think it's that bad," Elsa reasoned. "He's probably just tired." Yes, she was starting to look worse than before. "I need to take care of myself, go to a beautician," Elsa shared with her friends. She read a lot of informative women's magazines and articles, and every second said about the need to be a good wife, to take care of themselves, cook a delicious dinner, and most importantly, do not interfere with her husband in the evenings. Elsa honestly tried to do all this, but the relationship was getting colder every day. On the eve of a trip to Miami, Eugene suddenly hugged Elsa as she was arranging dinner on plates. "You know, I've been thinking things haven't been going very smoothly for us lately. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Are you getting tired with your daughter? Maybe since you're already going to Miami. You could stay a little longer. We've been working so hard for so long. For what? To be able to rest. Get yourself a nice room for a week." Elsa looked at her husband with surprise. "But shouldn't we vacation together?" "We still will. But it's a lot of work right now. A total jam, you know. Gotta make money for us, for our daughter." Eugene pulled Elsa to him and kissed her. "And stay in touch so I don't worry." Words couldn't convey the relief Elsa felt that evening. It was as if the lump in her chest had stopped pressing, constantly reminding her of herself. She grabbed her phone and texted Maggie, "You know, maybe I'm overreacting and we're fine. It's just that he's tired and so am I. That's what happens when a couple is together for so long." All evening Elsa flew around the apartment in high spirits, packing for herself and her daughter. Vivian played quietly with her toys and hummed something in her baby language. Elsa set a large suitcase by the door and put in it all the summer clothes she could find, a couple of bottles of cream and a swimsuit. "Why do you need such a big suitcase?" Eugene asked, coming into the room. "How was your week of vacation? I want to have dresses to wear, pretty blouses." And here Elsa pointed to the second part of the suitcase. "Here's just Vivian's stuff. Can you carry all this to the terminal from the airport to the hotel by yourself?" "I thought you were walking us to the airport," Elsa said reproachfully to her husband. Eugene scratched his head. "I'll work. I'll call you a cab. Why should I go to see you off if you're going to check in 5 minutes anyway?" but I'd love it if you could see me and my daughter off. I need help with the suitcase and the stroller. It's going to be hard to carry all that stuff right away. Well, I'll see if I can get a day off in the morning. You're the head of the department. Can't you spare an hour to do it yourself? No, Eugene shouted. I'm actually working. If I'm going to go off for every little thing, no one's going to keep me there. Elsa threw her things into her suitcase. Nonsense. A wife and daughter is nonsense. All right, I'll take my own leave. I'll do it myself. Unable to restrain herself any longer, she threw things, pencil cases, pushed the suitcase with her feet, and constantly muttered. Asshole. Who am I living with? Eugene decided that he had had enough of this performance and went to the kitchen, saying something like, "But that's what I thought. She's completely out of her mind." In the morning, Elsa got up earlier than usual, forgetting all the arguments and misunderstandings. Eugene wasn't there in bed, but she decided he was in the kitchen and went over to her daughter's crib. Vivian was sleeping sweetly and apparently wasn't going to wake up for another couple hours. Elsa threw on a robe and went into the kitchen. Eugene was not there, not in the bathroom, not in the toilet. Elsa picked up her cell phone and called. "Hello, where are you?" she asked in a broken voice. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand, Eugene. I'm on my way to work. What's your problem?" "I thought you were going to see us off," Elsa shouted. "Are you out of your mind? It's only 7 at some job, and you don't get off until 8. I told you yesterday that I'm not going to see you off. We've got all these projects burning up, we're running out of time." "Oh yeah? Well, what then?" Elsa canceled the call and called her husband the last words, cursing to herself. He has to work at 7? Vivian, as if sensing her mother's irritation, decided to wake up and cried loudly throughout the house. "What's the matter?" Elsa mumbled and went to her daughter. The day was hopelessly ruined from the very morning. Of course, Elsa didn't expect her husband to suddenly burst into flaming love, which he hadn't shown for a couple of years. But what she hadn't counted on was that he would not only stop caring about the family, but that he would do it so obviously. The next hour flew by like a blur. With one hand, Elsa dressed her daughter, and with the other she hailed a cab to the airport. Rolling down with her suitcases, she finalized the last of her travel arrangements. Airport. The driver asked as Elsa got into the car. "Yes, and if you could hurry up, please. You see, it wasn't easy packing with my daughter." "Sure, but I won't break the rules," the driver specified. "Thank you," Elsa exhaled with relief. "I'm not asking you to break the rules. No, it's my daughter." The driver looked at Elsa through the mirror. "And what, your husband does not help you?" And ran away early in the morning to work. He didn't even offer to help. Bad husband. I do not always help in everything, and groceries from the store to bring, and things to take to the airport. "Well, I guess you just love your wife. And your husband doesn't love you anymore," was surprised by the cab driver. "I don't think so," Elsa answered after a short thought. "It's just that we've been together too long." "Is it a difficult period for him or for you?" Elsa thought about it, and really, if you think about it that way, Eugene is doing fine. She was the only one who was worried all the time. The vacation season was just beginning, but the airport was already packed to capacity. The driver helped unload his things and wished Elsa good luck with her family problems. Then he drove away quickly, so as not to block the driveway. Elsa sat her daughter down and rolled her suitcases to the check-in area, typing a message for her friend Maggie. "I'm here. Have you arrived yet?" Elsa made her way through the crowd to the check-in window at number 12. On the scoreboard, the word Miami burned brightly. A large line had already gathered here. Elsa stood at the very end of the tail. "Arrived. At the front desk. Come on up," came the reply from Maggie. Maggie quickly found the right line and waved happily to her friend. She was only carrying a small backpack. "Where's all the stuff?" Elsa wondered. "So they are here, what there in Miami need?" "A swimsuit, shorts, and a couple of t-shirts." "And you took a whole suitcase?" Maggie nodded at Vivian, who was sitting next to her. "How are you guys doing?" "The old ones." "Better," Elsa admitted. "I've been carrying like a horse all morning. Vivian cries all the time, and Eugene refused to help with packing and didn't even see us off. His work is urgent, can you imagine?" "Do you want me to tell you the truth?" Maggie asked. "I don't like this whole thing. It's too weird, because a year ago he was practically carrying you around in his arms. Did he happen to have another woman?" "Oh, really? What girl?" Elsa shook her head. "He can't cope with his family." "Maybe that's why he can't cope," Maggie persisted. "I don't want to spoil your mood. It's just so weird. Doesn't he pay enough attention to his daughter?" "But he's just tired. You know, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think he's seeing anyone. He's at work all the time. And he says there's a lot of pending projects, and everything needs to be finished as soon as possible." "Yeah," Elsa grinned. "Men like to talk, tell a lot of things. It's very beautiful. I don't want to think about it now. Come on, it's our turn." Elsa went to the check-in desk and held out her passport. "Your luggage?" the receptionist asked. "Yes, it's right here." Elsa glowered. But Maggie waved her hand and put the suitcase on the belt herself. "Let me help you a little. Don't go crazy. We're on vacation, after all." Elsa smiled. The receptionist printed out boarding passes and held them out. Maggie checked in quickly too, and they headed to the lounge. "We have an hour and a half. I suggest we sit in a coffee shop somewhere," Maggie suggested. "I'd love to." Elsa almost jumped with joy. "I'm so hungry for coffee and some dessert." They found a coffee shop that wasn't the most crowded. Elsa immediately landed in a chair, and then smiled happily at her daughter and half-jokingly, half-seriously remarked, "And you, Olenka, madam. And well, you will be strong, sit next to me." Elsa sat her daughter next to her and took the menu. "So, sweet dessert. Pavlova. That's it." "Excellent choice." Maggie smiled. "I'll have tea and Napoleon." Maggie looked at her friend while they were taking her order. "Well, tell me in detail what's going on with you and Eugene." Elsa shook her head sadly. "I don't understand anything myself, to be honest. A couple years ago, even a year ago, things were completely different. He was so kind, so understanding, he gave gifts. We traveled a lot, bought an apartment and a car together. And now he's not the same at all. We've stopped talking. He doesn't pay much attention to Vivian either. When I told him about the trip, he barely reacted and didn't even go to see us off. That's what made me the most suspicious. Tired is one thing, but not wanting to spend time with his family is weird." "You sure it didn't seem to you like he was glad you were gone?" Maggie asked. "No, I don't think so," Elsa said. "He might be glad he doesn't have to talk to me for a week, though. I just hope he misses me and we can fix things." The waiter brought drinks and desserts to the table. "Anything else?" he asked. "No, thank you," Maggie replied. "Let's hurry up and eat this and go find our flight or we'll miss our landing." Elsa nodded and sent the first spoonful of pavlova into her mouth. It was very tasty. Maggie quickly ate her Napoleon and cheered up. "Did you know we have a whole week of vacation ahead of us? So forget about your Eugene and just enjoy life. Miami Sea, heat, paradise." "I guess you're right. I've had enough." Elsa kissed her daughter on the nose, and she giggled happily. The flight went smoothly. Vivian slept, and Elsa looked out the window and listened to music, trying not to think about anything. Miami met the travelers with excellent weather. The thermometer showed plus 28 degrees. "Wow," Maggie admired, taking off her sweater. "Yes, it's summer here. Let's take a cab and go to the hotel. We need to get rid of all this stuff." Elsa admired the view: palm trees, the sun, the sea. One look was enough to feel the endorphins filling her body. "I don't even feel sad," she said. "This place is amazing." "What did I tell you?" Maggie laughed. The hotel where they'd booked their rooms was just like the picture, stylish, modern, with a luxurious lobby. The nice girl at the front desk quickly issued guest cards and showed them how to get to the elevator. Near the elevator was a huge mirror, and Elsa stared at her reflection in full height. Wow, I'm really messing myself up, she thought. My jeans are too tight on my legs and my hair. I should go to the hairdresser. It can't be the way it used to be. She'd always taken care of herself. I'd better get cleaned up. Masha, she turned to her friend, will find a spa in Miami. Smiled her friend. And what would you like? First to the hairdresser. I need a touch-up and maybe a trim. That's a good idea. Let's go today. I'll play with Vivian while you take care of yourself, okay? The room was once again more boring than imagined. 2 rooms, one for Elsa and one for Maggie. In the center of the room was a large table and beautiful chairs with green velvet upholstery. But the most important thing was not that, but a huge window that overlooked the sea. Elsa shrieked with delight and ran to open the windows to let the sea air into the room. Now I'm just happy, she exclaimed. Me too. Maggie whirled around the room, putting things in closets and dressers. Can you believe it? And we have a whole week. Okay, now give me Vivian and go change. Let's go for a walk right now. As if in response to this suggestion, Vivian laughed and clapped her hands. The first day of vacation stretched into 2 days. One began in the morning in her home apartment, and the second was like a part of another life that was just beginning. Maggie dragged Elsa around to every interesting place she saw. They started with a local store where they picked out a beautiful beige dress with a macrame-style cape. Put it on right now. Come on, it looks great on you, Maggie exclaimed. Great, Elsa said sarcastically and went to the fitting room. A couple minutes later, she came out in a new look. It's gorgeous. And now to the hairdresser. The way to the salon lay through the main streets and the pedestrian alley stretching along the sea. At every step, Elsa turned her head around so as not to miss anything interesting. The bathing season hadn't started yet, but the center was already filled with tourists. Elsa admired not only the sea and houses, but also looked at beautiful people, men and women. She loved beauty in all its manifestations and admired those who found time and opportunities to keep a stylish look. There's the barber shop. Come on, Maggie dragged her friend inside. Decided that you want a bob, Elsa answered briefly, but after thinking she added, and maybe some light chalking? Let's see what the hairdresser says. The salon smelled of flowers, mixed with hairspray and hair dyes. A short girl in a black apron came out. Good afternoon. Can I help you? I'd like to do something with my hair, a haircut, and maybe remove some of this yellowing, Elsa said. The master looked at Elsa carefully. We'll do everything. Have a seat in the chair, she said. And you? She turned to Maggie. I'll just sit here with the girl, Maggie replied, sitting down in the chair and taking Vivian in her arms. Then she looked at Elsa. Good luck. The hour in the chair went by quickly. Elsa looked at herself in the mirror. Now she looked like her old self again, a beautiful, well-groomed woman with bright hair and shining eyes. Elsa thanked the master and quickly took a selfie, then thought for a moment and sent it to her husband. I wonder what he'll say. She got excited and got up from her chair. Well, it's gorgeous. It suits you very well, Maggie exclaimed as Elsa came up to them. Now let's go, we need to show ourselves and see the world. The day was coming to an end. Dusk was slowly descending on the city. Elsa and Maggie walked along the promenade and turned to the sea station with a tall spire that could be seen from afar. Then they went to the hotel. Vivian was very tired today. It's been a long day, said Elsa. Let's sit in the room, order some food, suggested Maggie. Let's do it. I'm not Vivian, but I'm exhausted too. But tomorrow we'll have a full program. Have you already thought it all out? Elsa grinned. A new message sounded. She looked at the phone screen. What is it? Maggie craned her neck. Nothing, Eugene, Elsa replied. He just wrote beautiful. I sent him a picture from the hairdressers. That's it? Maggie wondered. He hadn't written anything else all day? Nothing. But that's not my problem now. We decided that I wouldn't think about him on vacation. That's the right thing to do. In fact, if I were you, I wouldn't write him at all tomorrow. Back at the hotel, Elsa put Vivian in her crib and quietly went into the other room. Wow, she passed out fast. I usually put it off for half an hour, she said. That's rough, Maggie said. How hard can it be to raise a child? You don't say. But it's also a joy, Elsa said. Okay, Maggie nodded. Elsa looked uncertainly at Maggie's friend. Let's think about what we'll order. Here's the menu. And you know, I'm thinking about champagne. I'm on vacation. But I'm not alone. I'm not supposed to get drunk, said Elsa, but feel free to have one if you want. Come on, just one glass. You can afford a case. I deserve it, Maggie said. No, I'm not in the mood. But I would love a nice cup of tea. I think I'll have a couple hot dogs and some tea. And I'll get a bottle of wine and some grapes. It's vacation time, laughed Maggie. 10 minutes later, a waiter in a black suit knocked on the door. Good evening, your order, he said, bringing in a cart. Maggie set the plates and cups on the table. Do you have everything you need? The waiter asked. Yes, Maggie smiled. Except good company. The guy was embarrassed, coughed, and wishing her a good evening, hurried away. Well, now we're definitely resting, Maggie said. Elsa watched with tension as her friend emptied one glass after another and became more and more cocky. Will that be enough? She asked when Maggie had finished the third glass. I'm not going clubbing with you, if anything. My daughter's asleep. Oh, that's a shame. I was just going out for a nightcap. After all, life in a city like Sochi is just beginning. Maggie was upset. Don't be. Stop being such a boring bore. Take Vivian, and let's go. She taunted Ilona. Are you crazy? Vivian is asleep, and I'm not taking her anywhere. Elsa cut her off. That's fine, Maggie waved her hand. She got up and went to change. Soon she came out in a black dress. Don't wait at my place until morning. I'm going to party hard. Good luck, Elsa wished her sarcastically, and closing the door behind her friend, lay down on the bed. She checked her phone. Not a single message, not a single call, not even a simple question about how she was doing. What was going on after all? Despite Maggie's assurances that she would be out all night when she wasn't there at 3 or 4 in the morning, Elsa was worried. Need to call her, or who knows where this one might have gotten herself into. However, no call was answered. But 5 minutes later, Maggie sent a selfie picture with a handsome stranger. Who the hell is that? Elsa immediately asked, and, after thinking, added, don't you dare bring him to our room. I won't. The answer came immediately. Don't be so narrow-minded. Max is a great guy. They won't let him in the hotel without you. Don't worry. What if Vivian cries? Elsa worried. Vivian whimpered in the crib. Elsa left the phone on the bed and rushed to her daughter. What's wrong, sweetie? Are you hungry? Elsa took her daughter in her arms, gave her water, and rocked her. Thankfully, it worked. Vivian closed her eyes again. Elsa realized she couldn't wait for her friend either, so she lay down next to her, and when she opened her eyes, the bright sun was already beating through the windows. A new day had begun. Elsa got up and immediately checked on her daughter. She was still asleep, twitching her arms funny. She must have seen something interesting in her dream and wanted to grab it. Elsa smiled and went to the kitchen to make coffee. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Open up, it's me. Maggie's voice rang out. Well, she's finally back, Elsa thought, and opened the door. On the threshold stood her friend, tired but quite happy. She had taken off her high-heeled shoes and was holding them in her hands. Hi. Did you sleep well? Not very much, Elsa answered. I was worried about you. You shouldn't have been. I'm fine, Maggie replied. She stopped and inhaled the aroma with pleasure. Oh, this coffee smells great. I'll get a mug. Go ahead. I made enough for two. Maggie nodded happily and, swaying slightly with fatigue, walked to the bar and climbed onto a high stool. Taking a sip of the invigorating drink, she exclaimed, "You have no idea who I met. I'll tell you all about it." "Don't shout like that, please," Elsa begged. "Vivian is still asleep." "Oh yes, sorry. Anyway, listen. I went to one of the most popular local bars. I just wanted to sit, relax, look at people. And this man came up to me. Very handsome. You have no idea. We got to talking. He said he doesn't usually do this, but he wanted to meet me for some reason. Anyway, he's really cool, and he works as a director somewhere. I didn't ask for details. But if he's a good guy, I'm happy for you," smiled Elsa. "However, I would not be in a hurry to make any conclusions about him on the first day of acquaintance." "I'm not in a hurry. You should see how attentive and caring he is. So sweet, just like my Eugene a few years ago," said Maggie. "Yes," said Elsa. "Well, yes," said Maggie, embarrassed. "But that doesn't mean he's going to be like that. And by the way, I left out the most important thing. He has a friend, and he's not married. I suggested that Max take him with him tonight. And you can come with me too. We'll have dinner at a great place." "No way. Where are we going to take Vivian?" Elsa was surprised. "I told them you have a daughter and they don't mind. So we'll take her with us." "Have you ever thought about the fact that I'm actually married and I'm not going to meet anyone?" Elsa got angry. "Here, don't make it up," Maggie said. "First of all, I'm not telling you to go out with him, just to get acquainted. And second of all, maybe you should think about the future. Because if you want the truth, Eugene is your fool, and there's something wrong with him. Have you checked his cell phone? Especially when he's late for work?" "I haven't," Elsa blurted out. "What are you implying? You think he's cheating on me?" "What do you think? He didn't go to see you off. He's not interested in you or Vivian. How many times did he call you yesterday?" "How many?" "None," agreed Elsa. "And yet it still doesn't mean anything. I didn't notice anything suspicious, no traces of lipstick, no scent of perfume, no calls in the night, nothing like that." "Well, then he's hiding well, or he's just tired. Maybe the spark between us is gone. We have to rekindle it somehow," Elsa said thoughtfully. But Maggie almost giggled, but held back. Then she said seriously, "Elsa, you are such a beautiful, intelligent woman, and your husband does not appreciate you at all. Let's go to dinner. You don't have to go out with anyone tonight. You don't even have to book a room. We'll just expand our social circle. You know, a network of acquaintances is a very useful thing." "Okay," Elsa agreed. "I just won't wear the same net dress we bought yesterday. It's nice, but it's for a walk on the beach, not a restaurant. I don't care if you wear a sweater and tights. But I can get you a dress. I have one that would be perfect for you. Blue, evening." Elsa tried on the dress. It fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled, a slight blush immediately appearing on her face. Yes, definitely a vacation. A trip to the hairdresser and shopping could do wonders. Elsa took out her makeup bag and lightly tinted her eyelashes. Suddenly there was a message on her phone. "Hi, how are you? Have you finally decided to inquire?" Elsa said and quickly dialed. "Everything's great. We're going for a walk. You'll be in Miami until Sunday, right?" "Yeah, I'll fly in Sunday at 4 p.m. "Why?" "Nothing. I'll see what I'm busy with. Maybe I'll see you." "How's that?" Maggie walked into the room, and when she saw her friend, she gasped, "Wow. You look great. Maybe a little more lipstick?" "No, just the dress and mascara, and that's it." "What do you say?" "Well, there's plenty of time before tonight. Why don't we go to the beach?" Elsa nodded and went to gather Vivian, who was just waking up. The day passed cheerfully and quietly. Elsa and Vivian swam in the sea and warmed themselves on the beach under a large umbrella. Eugene was no longer showing signs of life, and Elsa wondered if she was doing the right thing by going to this dinner. What are you so excited about? Maggie asked. It's just dinner and small talk in a restaurant full of people. Do you think your husband has never been to one? You're probably right, Elsa agreed. Just promise that we won't go anywhere afterward. Not to any hotel beaches or even worse, to someone's house. No, of course not. Maggie was indignant. I wouldn't dream of suggesting that to you. All right? Well, let's try it. It'll probably be interesting. You won't regret it. As the sun set over the horizon, Elsa, Vivian, and Maggie went back to the hotel to change. The packing went without adventure. Elsa wore the same blue dress and picked up a beautiful beige jumpsuit for her daughter. Maggie, however, outdid herself and chose a bright red dress. Wow, too beautiful and daring, Elsa admired. Thank you for the compliment. Maggie jumped up and down. That's exactly the effect I wanted. Well, the cab is waiting for us. Let's go. The restaurant was right on the ocean, in the most beautiful spot overlooking the mountains. The lights were on everywhere, and it was so bright, it was as if night had not yet fallen. Maggie took Elsa's hand and pulled her inside, looking around the tables for her new acquaintance. Finally, she saw him and waved. Seeing Maggie, Max immediately stood up and rushed over to meet her. Hi, glad you could make it. I picked a table by the window. Hi, Maggie smiled flirtatiously. Great place. By the way, this is Elsa and Vivian. Nice to meet you, Elsa. Vivian, hi. Max smiled and turned to the table. And this is Victor, my friend. Elsa smiled and waved awkwardly, then took her seat and sat Vivian down. Are you okay with me being on a first-name basis? Max asked. Nothing, Maggie replied. You didn't really want to go out yesterday, but today you agreed. How do you like Miami? Is it nice to warm up and relax? It's a great place, Victor, Max's friend agreed. I won't be here long myself, but it's a great place for a vacation. Where are you from? From Moscow, Maggie answered. And you must be from the same city, Vince said. Yes, we're from New York, said Elsa, staring at the menu. Let's order something. Vince suggested. I was here last week. The food is very good. The steak was especially good. It was well done. Elsa, do you want a steak? Maggie opened the menu and flipped through a few pages. You like meat, don't you? Yes, I guess so, Elsa smiled. And some tea. Tea, said Vince. Coffee for me. Is everyone so serious? Max laughed. I'd take a coffee too, though. I'm driving. I'll have rolls. Maggie looked at Max. California. Juicy. Delicious. When the food selection was done, a casual conversation ensued. Max told how he had moved to Miami 5 years ago because he was tired of the cold winters in New York. Elsa noticed how Maggie was looking at him with shining eyes and immediately understood. It looked like her friend was in love. Well, are you not planning to move? Maggie asked, turning to Vince. No. I've got a lot of things to do in New York, all tied up. I can't work remotely. What do you do, if it's no secret? I manage hotels. It's still in its infancy. It's a lot of work. And you, Elsa, what do you do in life? Now, on maternity leave, Elsa pointed at her daughter, who was happily crawling on a high chair with a toy kindly brought by the waiters. And actually, I'm a florist. Wow, that's awesome. Do you want to go back to work? I would, of course. As soon as Vivian's too, we can think about daycare. But in the meantime, I'm doing the best I can. The evening turned out to be interesting. Elsa relaxed and enjoyed every time Max put his arm around Maggie's shoulders or just looked at her. Her friend deserved her happiness. For too long, things hadn't worked out for her. And he, Max, seemed like a good man. A couple hours later, dinner was over, and Vince hailed a cab to the hotel so that Elsa and Maggie would have an uneventful ride. Will I see you tomorrow? Max asked quietly, taking Maggie aside. She glowed and nodded. Of course I'll see you. Elsa wanted to get into the car, but suddenly Vince took her hand gently. It was nice to meet you. and your daughter is very sweet." "Thank you," Elsa smiled. "It's nice to meet you too." Without waiting for him to ask anything else, Elsa released his hand and put her daughter in the car. Then she got in herself. Maggie walked around the car and sat in the front seat. "Shall we go?" "Yes," Vince turned on the ignition. "Let's go." As soon as they arrived at the hotel and went up to the room, Maggie pestered Elsa with questions. "What did you think of them? How are Max and Vince?" "I think they're great. You and Max look good together. But how do you want to go out with him if we're leaving soon?" Maggie sighed. "I haven't told you that yet, and I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about it. In general, I want to stay in Miami for at least a month. There will be seen." Elsa stared at her friend in surprise. "Wow. And you did not rush to tell me this. And where will you live?" "First, I'll rent an apartment, and then maybe Max will offer to move in with him." "And if he doesn't?" "Why are you talking about the bad stuff? What do you think of Vince? I told you he's a nice guy, but I'm not interested in him. I'm married, Maggie. And yet I wouldn't get in touch with him if he tried to write. It's Eugene here. He's bound to say something." "Like what?" "Forget it, I'm just saying. But Vince really likes you." "I don't care. Again, Maggie, you don't have to set me up with anyone. If I wanted a lover, I'd tell you about it. I hope the vacation does its job and Eugene and I can have a normal conversation. After all, we have a daughter in common. We'll have to live together somehow." "Suit yourself," Maggie said as she went to her room. "But I gave your number to Vince," Maggie said. What Elsa shouted at her friend so loudly that Vivian flinched in surprise and dropped the toy she was holding. "I'm sorry, daughter. Now, Maggie, why did you do that?" "Oh, stop it. Okay, I'm really tired. I'm going to bed. He's not going to write you. You didn't even say goodbye to him. Is that okay?" "Forget it." Maggie closed the door behind her. Elsa was seething with indignation. She took her daughter in her arms. "It's time for you to go to bed too, sweetie. Aren't you hungry?" Vivian shook her head. Her daughter looked tired. Elsa laid her down on her large bed and lay down next to her. What does she even allow herself? This Maggie, Elsa continued angrily. "And I'm good too. Why did I even go there and let myself be talked into it? What will happen if Eugene finds out I'm here on vacation, going to all sorts of cafes with men? He's working there, making us money. What about me?" Making a firm promise to herself not to do anything like that again, Elsa closed her eyes and let fatigue take over. Sleep came over her almost instantly, but a few hours later Elsa jumped up at her daughter's cries and turned on the light. Vivian was all red. "Oh my God, what is this?" Elsa panicked and ran to the suitcase that held the first aid kit. Finding a thermometer, she put it to her daughter and stroked her hair, waiting for the measurements to finish. Finally, the alarm sounded 37.3, a fever, but not a high one. Elsa scrutinized the spots and clenched her teeth. The allergies were back, probably due to the local flora and fauna. But there was one problem: the medicine that always helped was left at home. Elsa grabbed Vivian and ran to the front desk. "Good morning. My daughter has allergies. Can you tell me where the nearest pharmacy is around here?" Hi. Yes, it's a block away. Can we help you? What's wrong? Should I call an ambulance?" "No, I just need to go to the pharmacy. She's allergic. It's happened before. I just need to give her some pills. If you don't need an ambulance, just give me a minute." "A member of our staff will take you to the pharmacy," the front desk said. Elsa nodded and hugged Vivian, cursing herself for all she was worth. Stupid. Who goes on vacation to Miami without taking allergy pills? I did, but I didn't take allergy pills. But I remembered to go against my better judgment. What a great mom I am. A tall guy in a suit came out into the hall. "I'll show you out." "Let's go. It's just around the corner." 5 minutes later, however, all was not so great. The pharmacy didn't have the medicine they needed, and neither did the second one, or the one 3 blocks away. The attendant threw up his hands. Shouldn't we call a doctor after all? Even if it's not very dangerous for her. Let the doctors give the right medicine. Elsa nodded, and they hurried back to the hotel. The ambulance came very quickly. "We have given what is needed," said the doctor. "But my recommendation is to return home as soon as possible and give her a course of treatment away from all the blooming things. The girl will be better off in a familiar home environment." "Okay. I'll get the tickets right away today." Vivian looked much better. But Elsa wasn't going to put it off. She returned to the room and ran into a perplexed Maggie. After quickly describing the situation, Elsa said, "I'll get your things together." Panicked, Maggie said, "And you take the tickets. Now go to the airport, and in 3 hours you will be home." The flight was uneventful. Vivian slept in the seat, and Elsa, finally calmed down, flipped through a magazine, not forgetting to glance at her daughter every now and then. When the plane landed, Elsa called a cab and hurried home. In this turmoil and worry for her daughter, she did not even think to warn her husband about her return. It was only outside the house that she remembered that she hadn't told him anything. "It's only 4 o'clock. He's at work. I'll pull everything up, write a message, have him call the clinic, and get Vivian in to see the doctor." Elsa stepped into the elevator and pressed the button with the desired floor. And when she got to the door of the apartment, she was surprised something was wrong. From the apartment came the aroma of fresh-baked goods. Perplexed, Elsa left her keys, opened the door, and, without thinking, walked toward the living room. Eugene was home, and not alone. What the hell is this? Elsa thought, tripping over a woman's sneakers. She didn't realize it right away, but only when Eugene, lightly dressed, jumped out to meet her, followed by a young girl in a silk blue robe. "Oh," said the girl, seeing who was standing near the entrance to the living room. Eugene was silent. There was a mixture of surprise and anger on his face. "Why did you come here today?" He squeezed out and turned to his companion. "Lindsay, please go to the room. I'll take care of it." Elsa pushed her husband into the room and followed to put Vivian in the chair. Then she turned around and blurted out, "What the hell is going on here? Are you out of your mind, bringing this one into our house, into my house?" "What house?" Eugene asked in a surprised tone. "Is this your house? I thought it was mine, because I bought it with my own money." Elsa had forgotten all the shock she had experienced. She couldn't say a word. She sat down on the edge of the couch and stared into the void, hoping that everything was just a stupid dream. Maybe she hadn't left Miami yet, and was just sleeping after hours of walking along the waterfront. Elsa rubbed her hands, pinched her palms with the tips of her fingernails, and realized no, it was all true. The awful truth. And Maggie had warned her that something was amiss. Why hadn't she believed her? Why did she think things could still work out between her and her husband? "All right," Elsa said with difficulty. "If that's the case, go away. I don't know what you were going to do with that. Go away." Eugene closed the door, came close enough to Elsa to speak softly but be heard. "But no, you're not kicking me out of my apartment. Understand? I've consulted the experts, and here's the thing. This apartment is 100% mine. So you're going to do the packing. And if you're going to come back early and mess it up, you pack it now." "Ruin what?" "Actually, Vivian got sick. Allergies flared up. So we got here early. And you know what? I'm glad I came. How long have you been?" Like this, lying to me, Eugene ignored the question. He was worried about something else. Take Vivian and leave. Later in court, you'll get custody, and we'll decide what days I can take her in. That's it. There's nothing more to discuss. What are you sitting around for? Get your ass in gear." "I'm not going anywhere. My daughter's sick. She needs to see a doctor. It's evening outside. Where are we going now?" "What is she sick with?" Eugene looked at his daughter. She's sitting there smiling, but look at her face and hands. "I'm not looking anywhere. Don't you dare manipulate that child. I won't let you. I told you, if you're still here in half an hour, I'll give you a hard time. Go." Elsa shouted angrily and went out into the corridor where the suitcase stood. Eugene's girlfriend also decided to have a say in the family squabble. Actually, it's your own fault. You didn't pay attention to him at all. You forgot he was a man. Look at you. You hear me, you little brat? Get out of here and don't write. Elsa couldn't stand it. How old are you anyway? You gonna tell me what to do? You think you're gonna live with Eugene? No, I don't think so. I'm not gonna give you a quiet life. Elsa took her daughter in her arms and rolled the suitcase up the stairs. She was followed by the unhappy cries of an aggrieved mistress. If you interfere, I'll tear your hair off. Or you, said Elsa and hurried away to the elevator. Eugene slammed the door loudly, and in the silence of the elevator, Elsa could clearly hear their conversation. Eugene was trying to calm his maiden, promising her that it would never happen again. And she, Elsa, was no longer an obstacle. Let that bastard never even dream of peace. I'll be a nuisance. And what a nuisance. She was angry. What to do now? Where do I go? Maggie's still in Miami. Another friend with a small child lives in a studio apartment. We can't go to their place. Her parents are in another city. Elsa went outside and sat down on a bench, then picked up her phone and dialed her friend. Maggie didn't answer right away, and it was hard to hear her. There was music blaring in the background. Get away to a quiet place. Elsa yelled. I'll be right there, Maggie replied. What's wrong? Is something wrong with Vivian? How was your flight? No, not with Vivian, with Eugene. Elsa told everything, and Maggie was shocked by what she heard. She was silent, unable to find any words, and then she blurted out, there he is. But where are you going? Why did you even go out? It's your house, too. I couldn't stay there with him. And Vivian was freaking out about the scandal. And Eugene said something to me that the apartment wasn't even mine, that he'd talked to some specialists. And then there's this, you have a minor child. So that's it? Go file a report, and I'll find a place for you to stay tonight. I'll call you back as soon as I find something. I'm not going anywhere. I'm tired. Vivian needs her pills, and I forgot to take them. I'm just going to sit here on the bench. You have a daughter in your arms. No bench. Maggie said, Wait, I'll book you a hotel room and a cab. You're at your house, not mine anymore. Wait, the car will be here in a minute. I'll call you back. Go on, hang up. Elsa didn't know how much time had passed before the call rang. Reluctantly, she picked up the phone and whispered, I'm listening. Tori. Elsa, there's a cab coming. Get in. The driver will take you to the hotel. Do you have your passport with you? Yes. Good. So there won't be any problems at check-in. You'll have a room for a week so you can recover a little, and then you'll think about what to do next. You understand me? I'll come over tomorrow. Stay with you. You've got Max. He'll be fine without me for a couple days, and you need support. Oh, I got a text. The car's in the yard. A cab did indeed come by. Yeah, okay, I'm in. Thank you for your support, Maggie. I didn't expect it. Oh, come on. It's gonna be okay. You'll see. No, it's not gonna be okay. It's gonna get better. That Eugene will regret everything, but it'll be too late. All right, go, we'll talk again. It wasn't until the hotel that Elsa realized what had happened. Now she was overcome by a wave of anger. She rushed around the room like an angry cat and scolded her husband with the last words. That's it. How long has he been with that young fool? So he doesn't need his daughter, he doesn't need his wife either. He's decided to take the apartment for himself. It's not going to work. We should go to a lawyer. His daughter won't be left on the street, despite the nightmare. Vivian was feeling better. Elsa managed to go to the pharmacy and find the right medication to replace the ones left at home. And in half an hour, the redness of her skin had gone away. Vivian played enthusiastically with the cubes, only occasionally giving voice. Suddenly, the phone rang. A message from her husband tomorrow. Come to the address I've left below. It's my lawyer. We need to solve all the issues with finances and the apartment, not counting on being able to use the child and take everything away from me. I'm not some fool. You can't do that. V10. 00. I'll be waiting in the lawyer's office. You won't make it, Elsa said aloud and forwarded the message to Maggie. Her friend answered very quickly. I'm already at the airport. I'm on the bus to board. I'll be there soon. You're not going to see any lawyer alone. Don't even think about it. That's what he came up with, genius. He doesn't even think about his daughter. But we'll show him. And a few minutes later, I'm flying out. Don't worry. Although I understand how shocked you are now, but everything will work out. I'll be at your hotel soon and wait for you. Kisses, hugs. Hang in there, Maggie said. A few hours later, she was sitting at a table in the hotel room across from a crying Elsa, comforting her as best she could. It was obvious. Elsa lamented. He stayed late at work, sometimes even on weekends, saying that there was an urgent project. And the way he talked to me. Why didn't I notice everything? No one wants to believe bad things, Maggie said. Do you think I've never been wrong? Look at Nigel. I had an even worse boyfriend. The only bad thing is that you have to live somewhere, and please don't be a fool not to give in to him. You should get everything for you and your daughter. You still need a place to live? Yeah, but he said, I don't even have to count on it. Did you sign any papers? Maybe he made some kind of a mess of things. What's the deal with the apartment? Who owns it? He is. It's complicated. His mom bought it and gave it to him. What do you mean, Mom? I don't understand, Maggie said. You bought it before Vivian was born, didn't you? Yes, but he took it over. I was stupid and naive. I didn't even think about arguing with Emily. Maggie jumped up from the table and waved her arms furiously. What are you saying? That he's going to take everything for himself? Like hell he will. You're registered there, aren't you? No. Like Vivian at my parents'. He kept promising that he was about to sign her in, but he never did. We had a fight or something. So here's the result. Girlfriend, are you out of your mind? Maggie couldn't calm down. She'd sit down in her chair and then jump up again. He looks like a cranberry in the snow. This is crazy. I'm going to text Max right now. I think he's got a friend who's a lawyer. Not Vince, another friend. Maybe he can give you some advice. No, don't, Elsa objected. Do you want to defend this scoundrel? Maggie was indignant. Not at all. You must take everything you can from him. However, it was easier said than done. The next day, Elsa put on her black suit, which she had taken on vacation for some reason, and so it was kept in her suitcase. She gathered her hair into a high ponytail and dressed her daughter. I'm ready, I guess she said. Maggie met her at the exit of the hotel. Her friend was dressed businesslike, too. A strange man was standing next to her. Hi, this is George, Maggie introduced him. He's a lawyer. Well, now let's go. Eugene was already waiting for Elsa in the office and was surprised when the whole crowd entered the office with her, the lawyer, Maggie with Vivian in her arms. He got up from his chair and stared at his wife with a displeased look. Who the hell is that? He asked. It's a lawyer, Elsa said arrogantly. Why? Why did you bring your daughter here? Do you think you'll get something through her? I don't think anything. I had no one to leave her with. But here we go. What did you want to tell me? The lawyer on Eugene's side, a tall blonde in a tight skirt, smiled wryly before proceeding to read out the documents. So let's start on Eugene's side. You, Elsa, have the following offer. He will give you $10,000 to start and pay you alimony monthly to support your daughter, $10,000. Elsa jumped up from her chair. Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind, Eugene? I know for a fact that we had at least $600,000 in our accounts. And by the way, some of it was mine. What's yours? What's $600,000? Are you out of your mind? It's not yours. You spent it all while you were at home, and a vacation to Miami. What do you think you went on that vacation with? Why don't you sit down and think about it? No way. I'll file a report on you, Elsa threatened. Wait, Elsa, The lawyer reached out to Eugene and pointed to a folder with documents. I have requested from you the certificate of ownership of the apartment and all other documents related to the property. And I'll be preparing a lawsuit to the court to divide the property and determine joint custody, Elsa's lawyer warned. And for alimony, of course, too. What kind of lawyer did you bring in here? Eugene shouted. I've got some bad news for you. He's completely clueless. What's this paperwork I'm supposed to give you? Here's a piece of paper you can wipe yourself with. No insults, please, said George. Maggie looked at both her friend and Eugene, as if dumbfounded. Elsa couldn't look at anyone and just stared at the floor. We don't accept your offer and will be filing documents with the court. Wait for the summons. That's the end of it, George said. Elsa, can I go now? He asked. $10,000 is a lot for you. Eugene shouted after them. If you don't take it, you'll get nothing at all. Don't even think about your half, you naive idiot. Maggie tugged on Elsa's sleeve. Don't even think about listening to him. Come on. A spring breeze was blowing outside, and Elsa stopped in the parking lot to breathe in the fresh air. In that office, she felt like she couldn't breathe at all and was about to suffocate. Elsa took her daughter from Maggie and held her close to her. Don't worry, honey. Mommy will take care of it, she said to Vivian. George came closer. We need to talk about this whole situation. Let's sit down somewhere. Elsa looked around. There are benches over there, come on. We need to strategize. I suggest we draw up a statement and go to court. Do you, Elsa, want to raise your daughter on your own? Of course, she replied. Do you think I can give her to him? All I want is to get my share. We bought the apartment a year after we were married, and we wanted our child to have it. And of course, we've been saving up. Yep. I've been on maternity leave for the last year. But we talked about it. Not only did I want it, but he wanted it too. Unfortunately, agreements are just words, but documents are proof. George sighed. How is it that your husband signed over the deed to himself? I didn't follow it and trusted him, Elsa admitted sadly. I never thought it would turn out like this. Elsa shook her head. Unfortunately, it does happen a lot. George looked her straight in the eye. I have to tell you the truth. If everything is legal, it will be extremely difficult for you to get anything. But I guarantee that we'll do the paperwork and try to get justice. Thank you, Elsa nodded. I know it's all my own fault. I can't even believe it. I wish I could turn back the clock. You can't go back, but you have a future, Maggie said. Everything is going to be all right. She looked at the lawyer. Thank you for your work. Write if you need anything else. George nodded and left. Elsa and Maggie decided to go back to the room to put Vivian to bed. The hotel is only for a week, Elsa sighed. What am I going to do after that? She didn't want to think about it, but the bad thoughts were intruding. All right, Maggie said. But you could get a part-time job picking up bouquets at home. Think about it. What home? Elsa objected. Not if you rent, no, but you could rent a place? Yes, I know it sounds terrible, nodded Maggie. But we'll have to do something. You can't stay in a hotel for too long. You'll have to move somewhere. I'll think about it later, Elsa said. Maybe you should go to a psychologist? Maggie suggested. So many things have come up all at once. I don't know how I'd cope in a situation like this. I don't know, maybe, but not right now. There is something to do, Elsa replied. Good. Then we need a distraction today, Maggie said. Maybe we should get some chips and popcorn and watch a movie. I don't need snotty melodramas right now, Elsa said. But I wouldn't mind watching a horror movie. Then let's go to my place, Maggie suggested, but then she stopped and slapped herself on the forehead. What's wrong? I don't understand, Elsa frowned. I was thinking I'm going to Los Angeles for 6 months, at least Maggie explained, and you can stay at my place for a while, just to pay the utilities. It's a lot better than renting. You don't even have to pay utilities for the first month. The important thing is that you settle in and settle down. and the solution will come. Maggie, I'm too much. I mean, you could rent it out for full price. I'll do that later. But you can stay with me for 6 months, and then we'll see. Elsa was completely confused by the suddenness of it all. Emily showed up right at the store where they had gone to pick out appetizers for the evening. And you're what? Maggie hugged her friend. Don't worry, we'll show him again. How much so? Elsa smiled weakly, wiped her eyes, and threw a couple packs of popcorn and baby juice into the basket. Let's go watch a movie. I need a distraction or my brain is just going to burst from the tension right now. The next day, Elsa received a text message from George's lawyer. Good afternoon, Elsa. I don't have good news. According to the documents, your husband has done everything very cunningly. I'm afraid it will be impossible to get your share. In the contract is your signature with a waiver of any claims. And the apartment, and it all received under the contract of gift. All you can do is file for divorce and alimony. Maggie, Elsa ran up to her friend. Look, finish reading the message. Maggie stood with her lips pressed together and looked at her friend gloomily. I don't even know what to say. When did you manage to sign a waiver? There's no way I can figure that out. He said something about it being easier to formalize, and I felt like everything that was going on wasn't true. It's just a very bad dream, and she's bound to wake up. Reality intruded on that dream in the form of a text message. So happy now. Would have taken your 10,000 and run. That's it from now on. Don't you dare call me. Don't interfere with my life. What about your daughter? Elsa replied immediately. The court will set a schedule. I'll be taking her to my place. That's great. Isn't it? Elsa declared. So I'll raise her, take her to daycare, feed her, clothe her, and do homework with her. And what, he's going to take her away for a couple weekends? That's just swell. What an asshole. Maybe I should try to make it so he can't see her. What does a child need a daddy like that for? Vivian's not guilty of anything, and he is her daddy after all, Maggie remarked. But somehow I don't think he'll take her. Elsa frowned. That girl of his is hardly likely to want to babysit, and I won't trust her with my daughter. That means he'll have to send her away for the duration of Vivian's arrival. I don't think he'd go for that. Yeah, Maggie nodded. It's getting more fun by the minute. I can stay with you as long as I need to, of course. I wanted to go back to LA in a week. Can you bring your stuff? I don't have much here at all. I'll put everything in a suitcase from the closet. Thanks. Elsa shook her friend's hand. You've just saved me. You could have done a fine job yourself. But why, when you can make life easier? So never mind. I hate him. Maggie sympathized and hugged her friend, then went to make coffee. The days flew by one after another in a hectic rush. The papers, the application, the care of little Vivian, Elsa's daughter. It seemed as if it had just been Monday, but it was already Friday. Sometimes she felt like she couldn't take it. And Elsa, after waiting for her daughter to fall asleep, would sob in her chair for hours. But in some moments the sun peeked out from behind the clouds and gradually a plan emerged. A month had passed since Elsa had returned home and discovered her husband with his mistress. She was still sad about it, but she could breathe freely and even dream. Elsa moved all her and her daughter's things into Maggie's apartment and even managed to set up a home, which was so necessary now for both her and her daughter. Difficult days came when it was necessary to go to court to sign a lot of papers and agreements to talk about something, to explain. Each time Elsa felt like a little girl who had made a huge mistake. When all the litigation ended, the now ex-husband was only to pay alimony. The amount was small, but it was enough to feed herself and her daughter and start looking for a job. I'll spend more on a nanny than I'll earn, Elsa lamented in a message to Maggie. What's the point of that? I'd rather save money and think of something else. Maybe even try to save up a little, Elsa pondered. One evening, that long-awaited idea popped into her head. She grabbed her cell phone and dialed her friend. Maggie, what if I don't go to work and pick up the bouquets myself? You said something about it, but I didn't realize how to do it. Now I'm enjoying it. I can buy some flowers, put together different bouquets from them and take pictures for social media. in case someone buys some. Yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. And you won't need a babysitter. And you have a 2-door refrigerator. There's plenty of room for food and bouquets. Then I'll start right away. I've only managed to save a little, but it's enough. The important thing is that it works. It might not work, Maggie pointed out. But at least you'll know you tried. And that's very important. And by the way, I have news. Max has asked me to move in with him. Can you believe it? I didn't even hint at it myself. Yay. That's great. Congratulations, Maggie. May everything work out perfectly for you. And it will when you start picking bouquets. I'm going to go to the store right now to get flowers. Don't forget to send a picture. Good luck. Before her maternity leave, Elsa used to love what she did. She came to the flower shop before everyone else, changed the water in the vases, and collected the first bouquets for those who would come very soon and wanted to choose a gift for their loved ones. Elsa was very much loved in the salon and considered a talented florist. But in the 5th month of pregnancy, she had to go on maternity leave in order to carry her daughter in peace and not to carry heavy armfuls of flowers and vases filled with water. And now, after all this time, she has her hands on flowers again. A graceful bridal bouquet of white roses formed as if by itself. Elsa inhaled their fragrance, took a few photos, and then, without wasting time, posted them to her accounts. Oh yeah, I promised Maggie I'd send it. Elsa remembered and sent her friend a photo of the bouquet. She immediately called back. Hurrah, said Maggie. I will get married, and you will definitely collect a bouquet for me. Why is it all coming to that already? I don't want to get too excited and ahead of things, replied Elsa. But I think Max is thinking of something like that. He's even asked me a couple times how I feel about marriage. Well, it's all about me. Why don't you tell me how you're doing? That bastard never contacted me again. He wrote once, said I'd forgotten about wet wipes and diapers and offered to pick them up. I said, let him keep them. He'll definitely need them. Maggie laughed out loud. That's right. We're settling in nicely. Everything is perfect. I can't thank you enough. You're a lifesaver. And Vivian has a nice corner in the back room. I don't know what to do next yet, Elsa admitted. I hope my bouquets will be bought and I can support myself as I used to. You certainly will. You are a master after all. The main thing, do not give up. And as you get used to it, come to Miami. We'll walk, swim and sunbathe. We'll find you a decent man too. I don't think I want a normal man anymore. No abnormal, no man at all, Elsa grinned bitterly. Now I'm just beginning to realize how much I've neglected myself and gotten bogged down in diapers, cooking, cleaning, and catering to anyone's needs but my own. You have no idea how wonderful it is to have croissants and coffee for breakfast, and not to think that this monster needs meat sandwiches, and he eats porridge, but he doesn't want to cook it himself. So I ran around like an idiot, cooking. But he figured it out quickly, and he's been withdrawing the money to his account. I didn't tell you. Turns out he was making a lot more than he said. A lot more. And he'd been saving it all while my maternity pay went to baby and food. But where was he saving it? Into Mom's account. For otherwise all the funds would have been divided in half. I don't know, Elsa replied. They didn't tell me where exactly, and I don't want to know. It's an idiotic situation. I can't tell you how angry I am at that, Eugene. But I learned your lesson too. No signing a piece of paper believing in a bright future. None. I agree, Maggie nodded. I still can't sleep well. Divorce and breakups are painful, unpleasant enough as it is. But when something like this happens, maybe in this case it's for the best though. You know, I'd still be sad for him and suffer. Now I just hate him, and yet it's a strong feeling too, and it hits you. You hate, and he doesn't care there. It's good that you've taken a job. It'll be easier to distract yourself, Maggie continued. And I'd have an affair with someone if I were you. You don't have to get married or even live together. But you're a young and beautiful woman. Believe me, there will be plenty of offers. So be it, Elsa sighed. For now, I only want to work. Except that so far no one writes that he wants to buy a bouquet. If it doesn't work out, I don't even know what I'll do then. Maggie laughed. And you what? How long has it been? Half an hour. Go have some tea and exhale. You'll do fine. Elsa laughed too. either from nerves or from the realization of her own stupidity, and said goodbye to her friend. Vivian was still asleep, and Elsa went to the window, which had a stunning view of the city. At the same moment, the sun peeked out from behind a cloud. Elsa smiled. She didn't feel like crying right now. Maybe Maggie was right and everything really was still ahead of her. But as much as she wanted to believe in miracles, reality kept coming in the form of an empty fridge and purse, a crying daughter wanting a new toy like the girl from the cartoon, and her own reflection in the mirror without cream or good moisturizer. It's been 2 days since Elsa posted a picture of the bouquet and no feedback. But no one has ever placed an order. The good mood given by the new endeavor was quickly replaced by disappointment. I guess I'm a useless, stupid idiot, Elsa scolded herself. How could I have screwed up my life so badly? She made scrambled eggs for breakfast. Her phone rang, but she didn't pay attention, figuring it was another spam message. Or it was Maggie's text, but she could answer her a little later. Elsa took Vivian out of the crib, sat her down on the high chair and gave her porridge, then sat opposite and began to eat her scrambled eggs greedily. Only when the whole portion was eaten, she remembered about the phone and turned it on. A message popped up on the screen. Hey, it's Vince. Remember when we went out to dinner in Miami? I hope you don't mind that I texted you. Just wanted to see how you were settling in. Elsa put the phone down on the table and moved farther away from him just in case. Her heart pounded like crazy. I won't answer him, she thought. I don't want anything ... or I do. At a complete loss, Elsa began to wash the dishes. Water always soothed her, but not now. Suddenly, without even giving herself time to think about what she was doing, Elsa grabbed her phone and answered, "Hi, I'm fine. How are you doing?" The second she did, she regretted what she'd done and wanted to delete the message, but it was too late. Vince had read it and was typing a new one. I'm good too. I flew into your city the day before yesterday and I'm staying here for work, so I thought maybe you'd like to see me. And then he added, why don't you show me around the city? And Vivian can be brought along. Elsa didn't answer and called Maggie. Her friend didn't pick up right away, and when she did, she sounded overly tired. IZ. Hilarious, Maggie piped up. Hi, I'm on the treadmill, I'm fine. Vince is texting me. He wants me to go out, Elsa said. Oh yeah, Maggie realized, apparently turning off the treadmill as the buzzing in the phone subsided. I forgot to tell you. What was it you forgot to tell me? Elsa asked sarcastically, already knowing what the answer would be. Hey, exclaimed Maggie. But just recently George was in Miami, and Max and I saw him. Did George ask about you? I told him a little, without any details. No big deal. I just told him that you're single now, and he did a really bad thing to you. He seemed kind of upset with you and said he was sorry. You're such a beautiful girl, aren't you? And that's not all, Maggie continued. Then as we were leaving, he asked if I could call or text you. I said I didn't know how you'd react, but it was always worth a try. He liked you, Elsa, back then. And he didn't even mind at all that you had a daughter. Said Vivian was a very sweet girl. Don't be mad at me, please, Maggie begged. I didn't run after him with your number, I swear. He asked for it himself, okay? He's asking if I'm willing to go out with him, Elsa admitted. Wow. Maggie marveled. What did you say? Nothing yet, said Elsa. I don't know. I'd go if I were you, advised Maggie. Like I said, you don't have to marry him, after all. Yes, but taking Vivian along seems odd to me. Well, get a babysitter for a couple hours, Maggie suggested. You definitely need to rest, take a walk, socialize, right? I know a nanny used to leave Vivian with her when I was running to court. She's very reasonably priced. I'll write and see if she can babysit some more. Hurrah, squealed Maggie. Good luck to you. Be sure to tell me later how it went. The babysitter was free, and Elsa finally decided to answer Vince. Can we do it today or tomorrow? Not without Vivian. I've decided to leave her with the nanny. The reply didn't come right away, but when it did, Elsa smiled. I'm glad you said yes. If you can, let's do it today. I'll pick you up at 6. It was a few hours before 6, and Elsa scurried around the room, going through the children's toys and picking out her outfit. Costumes had to be picked up at once. She wanted to look delicate, feminine. Well, these dresses that she had left much to be desired and did not fit at all. And so, when all the contents of the closet were scattered on the floor, Elsa finally came across the dress hanging farthest away blue, up to the knees. How had she forgotten about it? Elsa immediately tried it on and admired herself in the mirror. She could walk in it without worrying that someone would look askew. At 5 o'clock, the nanny came, and Elsa told her about her daughter's new skills. "Don't worry," the nanny assured her. "We'll have a great time. Won't we, Vivian?" Vivian nodded happily and pulled the nanny to look at the new toys. Elsa finally had time for herself and ran to the bathroom to style her hair and put on makeup. She decided to limit herself to a minimum of makeup, so as not to look too dressy, and in a few minutes she was ready. 5:55. Vince called to see if Elsa could come out now and said he was waiting for her downstairs by the front door. Not believing this was actually happening, Elsa kissed her daughter on the cheek and told her to behave. Then she hurried downstairs. Vince was standing near the door, and when he saw her, he went to meet her. "Hi," he said, smiling. "I'm glad you said yes." Hi, Elsa struggled to keep from smiling. Vince looked amazing in his light summer suit and, of course, the flowers. "These for you," he said, handing her the bouquet. "Thank you. They're very pretty. So where would you like to go?" "I thought we should sit down and have dinner somewhere first, and then we could go for a walk if you wanted to. Especially since it's so warm today." "That's a good idea. Let's go. I found a place. I hope you like it." Vince pointed to a gray car parked outside the house and opened the door. "Get in." The interior smelled of men's perfume. Vince took the driver's seat and turned on the ignition. "How are you doing?" "Well, I take it Maggie told you," he asked Elsa briefly. "I'm sorry about that, but I hope you're doing well." "I am now," Elsa nodded. "I'm settling down and starting a new life." She glanced at Vince, but quickly looked out the window. "How's it going with you?" "A lot of work." "I didn't come here for nothing. We're starting a new project, so you're not going to New York for a while?" "No, I'll definitely be here for a while. I have to open an office from scratch, get everything up and running." "Great." Elsa nodded, not knowing what else to say. They drove in silence for a while, discussing only minor things. But then Vince stopped the car and said, smiling, "Here we are." He got out and opened the door, holding out his hand to Elsa. "I didn't tell you that you look beautiful, by the way." Elsa blushed and held out her hand in return. "Thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that." The cafe was very cozy and quiet. The first awkwardness after the meeting had passed, and Elsa was finally able to talk about her life. Of course, without going into details. "Now I want to go back to floristry," she finished. "It's not easy, of course, but I think I can do it." "Somehow I don't doubt it," said Vince. "Can you show me pictures of your work?" Elsa nodded and found the portfolio page on her phone. Vince flipped through the photos for a few minutes, then pointed to one bouquet of flowers. "Oh, we're going to need these. We can talk about me keeping the order later." "But no," Elsa said worriedly. "You are an acquaintance, but purely to be supportive." "I certainly want to support you, but I wouldn't order anything if I didn't need it. We just want to decorate the hotel lobby with dried flowers. Your flowers will be perfect for us." Elsa was confused. "But then I'd be more than happy to work." "Sure, we'll discuss it later, when you're ready." Vince nodded and added tea from the huge glass teapot. "What are your plans for your life? What are your dreams?" "Well, I want to open my own flower shop someday. It's a long way off now, of course, but I hope it will happen someday." "And you?" Elsa asked. "I've always wanted to travel, but so far I've only been to 3 countries. My work requires my presence, and I cannot leave for a long time. But I believe that one day I will organize my work so that I don't have to come to the office every day, and I will go on a big tour." That's very cool. Elsa marveled. What kind of vacation do you like? Active or one where you just lie on the beach? Well, you can lie on the beach with a beautiful girl, said Vince, winking. But active. I like to go to ancient cities and study architecture. You know how many of these houses are still standing, built hundreds of years ago. I guess I'd like to see them all. Old houses attract me too. Elsa nodded. I haven't been abroad much, but I've been to Boston. I've been there. Is it not far from here? Yes, it's not far, Vince nodded. There's a lot to see. Of course there is, Elsa agreed. There's an old neighborhood and some historic houses. In fact, it has the oldest apartment building in the country. Elsa found pictures on the internet and showed them to Vince. He almost clapped his hands together. It looks very interesting. How about we go there together if you like Boston? I like it a lot. But what about Vivian? You can't go without her. It's one thing to leave her with a babysitter for a couple hours. I wouldn't dream of suggesting that you leave your daughter at home, Vince said with an embarrassed smile. Of course we'll go with her, but if you agree, then I'm okay with it. Tomorrow. What is tomorrow, Sunday? Can we make it a trip? It was amazing how easy and relaxed they were now. At first Elsa was afraid to put an extra word, but now willingly supported the conversation and even agreed to the trip. I can imagine telling Emily about this, she laughed softly. I can imagine her sending me selfies of herself with a happy, amazed face. Looks like she was already trying really hard to set us up. The story could go on. I think Emily was being very modest, Vince grinned. She just slipped a slip of paper with your number on it into my pocket. Elsa laughed. I'm kidding, Vince continued. Actually, I asked for it myself, having had enough of your hints. Elsa and Vince decided to take a walk along the promenade. There was a nice, light breeze outside, and the sun was beginning to set. Vince suddenly took Elsa's hand, and she squeezed it lightly, feeling incredibly happy. If someone had told her on the day she'd broken up with Jason that she was about to meet a wonderful man, she certainly wouldn't have believed it. Like the gallant cavalier he was, Vince hadn't rushed into anything. But Elsa was finally bold enough when he kissed her lightly on the cheek as he walked her home. She looked at him in a way that was impossible to mistake. That look must have given Vince the courage to touch her lips. Tentatively at first, but more and more confidently with each passing second. Wow, he whispered. Do you know how great you are? Elsa lowered her eyes in embarrassment. She didn't want to say goodbye, but her daughter was waiting for her at home. Vince walked Elsa to the apartment door and went downstairs, promising to write. Elsa opened the door and went into the room. The nanny came out to meet her. I put her to bed, she said quietly. How did it go? Elsa asked in a whisper. Wonderful. Thank you for your work. And the next day, walking through the streets of Boston, Elsa received an order for a bouquet. As soon as she believed in the best, it began to happen, as if by itself. Already back home, Elsa told Emily about it on the phone, and she laughed with joy. You see, and you didn't believe me. But the important thing is, you know what? What? Elsa asked. That lawyer Jake texted me today, remember? You're not going to believe this. What is it? Elsa became alarmed. Anyway, he was digging through the files and found a certificate that said you were entitled to money after the divorce. Really? Elsa gasped. Yes. Jake contacted Jason and found out something unbelievable. It turned out he didn't have any more money. The idiot had put it all in his mistress's name. What do you mean? Elsa was dumbfounded. I thought it was on my mom. Turns out it wasn't. And you can imagine, of course, she left him, but took all the money with her. From surprise and shock, Elsa did not immediately find what to say, but still squeezed out. That's how karma works. Well, it's a shame for him. I'm not even sorry I did it, and I wish him luck. Now she had faith that everything was going to be all right. Life was slowly getting better. A millionaire takes in a beggar with a baby as a nurse, and when he jokingly invites her to his wedding. Stefan had just learned that his mother was gone. It was early morning when the call came from an unknown number. The man was already awake, lying in bed, struggling with anxious thoughts. He had a premonition of trouble. Probably, after all, his elderly mother had been in intensive care for almost a week. Her condition all this time remained stably serious. And after that call, the man realized everything before he even answered the call. Stefan was a mature and strong, successful man. Moreover, in recent years, he himself had become a support for his mother. It was as if they had switched places. Now the grown-up son behaved like a parent, and his mother turned into a child. And yet, after the doctor's words, Stefan suddenly felt like a thin, weak blade of grass in the wind. Gone was the support, gone was the hope. The man felt like an orphan, through the pain, despair, and rejection. Strangely enough, thoughts of Trixie came through. What would happen to her and her young son Edward now? Would they too disappear from his life? Because Amelie was the only thing that had held them together. And now she was gone. Stefan hadn't expected himself to be thinking about Trixie at a time like this. But it was now that the man suddenly realized that he didn't want to lose her for anything. Surprisingly, it was a thought he would ponder later. Right now, he had a lot of things to do, organizing a farewell, settling some legalities. It's a good thing. It would take his mind off his grief, prevent him from falling into despair or apathy. Amelie raised her son by herself, without the help of relatives and her husband. She gave birth to Stefan, being already quite an old woman. She was almost 40 at the time. In those days, it was a very respectable age to become a mother, especially for the first time. Amie's peers were already nursing grandchildren when she was getting used to being a mom to a newborn baby. The woman had no regrets. This child became the center of her universe, the meaning of life, joy. And Amie more than once said this to her son, called his happiness, favored boy, pride and hope. With Stefan's father, the woman did not work out, and could not work out. It just happened. Amelie was born and raised in the village. Then, like many of her peers, went to study in the city. Amelie dreamed of working as an elementary school teacher. First, she always got along with small children. Secondly, she clearly had a talent for conveying information to these little ones in an accessible way. Amelie had taught a single child to read by herself when she was still a teenager. She was provided with a hostel, a minimum stipend as a non-resident, and her studies began. The girl liked studying. Soon she became one of the best students of the course. Her parents were proud of their successful daughter. Of all their children, she was the only one who entered the university, and even became an excellent student there. While classmates ran on dates and discos, Amelie gave all of herself to her studies. She was hardly interested in guys. Then, at a young age, the main thing was to get out of poverty, to get a foothold in the city, to establish themselves in the profession. And then you can think about your personal life. Amelie graduated from university, worked for a year on assignment in her own village school, and again went to the city. She rented an apartment there, got a job at a language gymnasium. A young specialist with a red diploma was accepted for a prestigious position with a good salary with great joy. She liked the work. She easily managed to find a common language with all the students. She knew how to explain complex topics to kids. Children reached out to her, respected, and even loved their first teacher. Amelie was glad that she was able to find her way in this life at once. Many people cannot work at a job they do not like. They suffer, looking for something new. But she immediately found herself in her place. True, here with a personal life did not add up. Appearance, she had a pleasant. Her admirers periodically appeared. Whether each of them repulsed her something, sooner or later someone turned out to be greedy, someone boring, and another generally boorish. And so Amelie was left alone. It's time to lower the film. Age is also not young, shook her head mother when her daughter came to the village to visit relatives. Demands you, it seems, too high, driven completely in his city. It's high time you got married. Her sister joined in. She was older than Amelie by only a couple of years, but she was already the mother of 4 children. The sister had recently divorced her husband and was living with her daughters at her mother's house. She did not work with their father, as her girls were still very young. Amelie periodically helped the single mother with money and always felt sorry for her. To hear from her sister words about the need to urgently run to the marriage was especially strange. It's time to give birth, the mother continued. Age is pushing you down. If you don't have time, you'll be alone and needless in your old age. These conversations depressed her, made her feel somehow inferior. Amelie was quite satisfied with her life, her favorite job, a beautiful, albeit rented, apartment, socializing with friends, traveling. Yes, sometimes she dreamed of a beloved and reliable man next to her, and a child, of course. But applicants for the role of husband and father of descendants in Amelie's environment has not yet been observed. Worthy specimens were already sorted out, and other options woman categorically did not suit. She did not want to become an unhappy, almost destitute single mother like her older sister. One day Amelie was sent to the all-Russian competition of elementary school teachers, but not somewhere, and in the capital. The woman then returned with a victory, which earned herself even more respect from the administration. Oh, they even wrote in the local newspaper. A full-page article with several color photos. But Amelie didn't just come home with a win. At the time of her return, she had no idea that a new life was already living and developing under her heart. After the award ceremony, which took place in a huge concert hall, Amelie decided to take a walk around Moscow. Amelie visited many places in one evening: Red Square, the Tretyakov Gallery, and the famous zoo. A little tired, but overflowing with impressions, she returned to the hotel. Almost reaching her destination, Jacob, the future father of her only child, called out to her. She hadn't realized it at the time, of course. He was a handsome, tall man, smiling, charming. He introduced himself as Jacob and said that he lived in a neighboring hotel. Jacob had come to Moscow for work. He, in his own words, often had to do it. He confessed that he had been watching Amelie for a long time, and that he liked her very much, but he still did not dare to approach her. And tomorrow the man was already leaving. That's why he took the risk of meeting her, because there would be no other chance. They talked for a long time, sitting on a bench in the square in front of the hotel. Amelie herself was surprised at how easy it was for her to talk to this man. She felt as if they had known each other for years. Jacob was from Novosibirsk, a large city in the north of the country. He admitted right away that he was married, but unhappy in his marriage. Amelie felt sorry for him for some reason, and in general she behaved that evening quite differently than usual. Her seriousness and innate caution had evaporated. She explained it to herself that she'd had too many experiences that day. Jacob was handsome, and his manners were very pleasant. So they spent the night in Amelie's room. No promises, no commitments. They both knew they'd never see each other again. They just accepted it as it happened. Two adults were drawn to each other by an irresistible force. Amelie had never allowed herself to do anything like that before, but she couldn't resist, and the atmosphere was conducive to play. The woman, as if trying on the mask of someone else, allowed herself to be more liberated, free than always. They said goodbye in the morning. Jacob hugged Amelie tenderly, kissed her, and said many beautiful words that made the woman blossom and feel like a queen. Yes, they would never see each other again, but it was a blessing to have met such a man in her life. Amelie knew she would remember him fondly. A month after returning home, Amelie realized she was expecting a baby. At first frightened, but then overjoyed. Wasn't that what she had once dreamed of? Yes, it didn't work out with her husband, but she would have a son or daughter. When her parents found out that Amelie had gotten pregnant out of wedlock, they were furious. Shame the father uttered when he heard he was about to become a grandfather again. How could it be? What on earth have you done? Wailed the mother. Don't expect any help from us. You made your own mess. You'll have to clean it up yourself, the father joined the conversation again. Didn't you rush me into motherhood? Amelie reminded her parents. She hadn't expected a different reaction, so she wasn't particularly upset. It's a shame and a disgrace to give birth without a husband, her mother repeated and pressed her lips together resentfully. Amelie realized that she could manage on her own without the help of her husband and family. She had a good job that allowed her to rent an apartment and to do almost nothing for herself. Yes, it may be difficult, especially the first years of maternity leave. But nothing will get out of it somehow. The joy of realizing soon motherhood overshadowed all other feelings and emotions. And then Stefan was born, a wonderful, healthy baby, very much like his father, who had not even suspected the existence of this miracle. And Amelie suddenly felt truly happy and whole. The woman had no doubt she would overcome everything, cope with everything. Stefan knew this story from his mother's words. She had told him everything when she was a teenager. Her eyes shone with joy. It was obvious that she was very happy with the memories. Stefan admitted that his mother had embellished the story. Of course, it had been very difficult and frightening for her at times. Maybe there was resentment for the relatives who had returned at a difficult time, and for Jacob too, who hadn't changed at all since the meeting. Either way, his mom had said many times that Stefan's appearance was the best thing that had ever happened to her. And her son believed her. Stefan grew up to be a handsome and bright boy. Unlike many other children, he hardly ever got sick. The boy had excellent grades, and also had time to practice chess and swimming. He was successful in both sections. Stefan went to competitions and tournaments, won medals, participated in school Olympiads. Sometimes Stefan missed his father, whom he did not know at all. But he didn't tell his mother about it. He didn't want to upset her. So it was not easy. In order to provide for her son, she not only took 2 jobs at the gymnasium, but also tutoring. Stefan saw it, appreciated, understood, and dreamed of growing up to become a successful rich man and pile his mother with gifts. Amelie tried to give her son everything, but did not spoil the heir, of course. And there was no such opportunity. Nevertheless, the woman always found the means to send Stefan to the next competition or pay for his section. When the time came, Stefan entered the budget department of the local university on his own. After graduating, he became an IT specialist. After receiving his diploma, the young man first got a job at the town forming plant. He was immediately offered such a salary that the guy was even dizzy with surprise. It cost him a lot of effort to keep himself in control. Over time, the young specialist was noticed, appreciated, made the head of the department. His salary, accordingly, increased significantly. Within a year, the guy was able to buy himself and his mother a large apartment in a prestigious area of the city. Finally, they moved into their own place. The rented apartment was, of course, cozy and already quite native, but it still belonged to a stranger. And here, at last, their own corner. Amélie couldn't get enough of her son. He was handsome and clever, and now he was rich. Stefan didn't work for his employer for long. One day he decided to take a risk, opened his own company. He already had work experience. He understood the peculiarities of the service market. Of course, it was not easy to make up his mind. To leave the forced money place, to rush like in a maelstrom with his head into the business, which is still unknown whether it will bring profit. But deep down, Stefan felt that everything would be fine, because he had a clear plan. And so it was. Stefan's firm grew, developed, brought more and more income. It was the kind of money that could not be earned at the factory, even in the highest position. The guy skillfully managed the funds, something let for the development of business, something put aside, something sent in investments. And of course, Stefan, as he once dreamed, made gifts to his mother. Now he could afford it. Eventually, Stefan had to move. He grew up in a small provincial town and started a business there. But his business grew. He became cramped in the provinces. So a new stage in Stefan's life began, conquering the capital. It wasn't easy. Competition, the need to deal with many issues, both business and purely domestic. The guy, at times, did not sleep for 2 days. But Stefan managed to cope. He got his business up and running and settled in. Now he lived and worked in Moscow. Stefan tried many times to move his mother closer to him. It seemed to him that nothing could keep her in her native city. But he was wrong. At first, Amelie did not want to part with her work. Great. I'll get to graduation, and then I'll think about it. Where will they go without me, she said. Then, already on a well-deserved rest, she was kept in place by other moments, friends and neighbors, familiar yards, apartment. In general, Amélie refused to move. It seemed to her that she would not find her place in the capital. You work all the time, all in business and labor, and I do not know anyone there. What am I supposed to do? Sit all day long in 4 walls. At least I have friends here. We go for walks, to the theater, to cafes. But what's waiting for me there? In the end, Stefan realized that it is useless to persuade his parents. He often came to visit her or brought his mother to stay with him. Amélie, by the way, did not like Moscow very much. She quickly tired of the city. But Stefan enjoyed being in the metropolis. He felt like a fish in water here. So many events, so many opportunities. So many opportunities, so many potential options for profit. As for Stefan's personal life, it was not as successful as his work. When he was young, he had lovers and fleeting hobbies. But even in his younger years, Stefan realized that all these were nothing more than short-term romances. The guy has formed in his head an image of the other half. At the head of the chapter, he put such qualities as intelligence, kindness, sensitivity, loyalty. But none of the girls, which in large numbers hovered around the successful young businessman, did not meet this ideal. And then Stefan met Kira. It happened in a club, where the successful businessman and his colleagues celebrated the conclusion of another contract, which was to bring good profits. A tall, slender girl fell on Stefan's head in the most literal sense. She was accidentally elbowed by a careless waiter. That's why the beauty couldn't stay on her feet. Afterwards, Stefan found out that it had all been a setup, the acquaintance and the clumsiness of the waiter, who turned out to be Kira's former classmate and accomplice. But then the incident had been a small miracle and resembled a scene from a romantic comedy. Kira and Stefan met. The girl immediately charmed the young man with her modesty, even shyness. It was hard to believe that with such a spectacular appearance, Kira remained not spoiled, sensitive beauty that Stefan knew. Usually they behaved like capricious princesses, but this girl was strikingly different from the others. That was probably what had gotten Stefan hooked. They started dating. The closer Stefan got to know Kira, the more he fell in love with her. Here's the updated story with the names changed. The girl was not only beautiful and smart, but also incredibly kind. She pitied stray animals and abandoned children, cried over the sad endings of movies, always served beggars. And Kira, unlike Stefan's previous girlfriends, didn't demand gifts. No, Stefan had never been greedy. When a young man met a girl, he always wooed beautifully. He liked to please people close to him. Therefore, Stefan did not spare money and time for surprises. But the girls very quickly began to abuse the generosity of Stefan, which immediately repelled him. Because the feeling that you are used, it is always unpleasant, and Stefan couldn't take it. Why continue the relationship if they see you only as a resource? The guy had already decided that all young women are like that, or become like that next to a successful man. But then Kira came into his life. Kira looked at Stefan with admiring, loving eyes. She didn't need expensive jewelry, travels, money, but only if he was near her, the man she loved. It filled Stefan with happiness. He felt that he had finally met his other half, and he was beginning to think that it would never happen. But it soon became clear that it was all a setup, the supposedly chance meeting with Kira, Stefan's affection for her, and most importantly, her perfect behavior. It was all part of an elaborate plan. Nick, Stefan's financial deputy, had long wanted to take over the firm, and he planned to frame and imprison the chief so that he would not interfere. Nick had spent years delving into the financial and legal nuances of the company. Stefan trusted him. They'd been classmates once. Back then, Nick had seemed like an honest, straightforward, and very smart guy. Stefan never imagined he'd do that to him. Kira was Nikolai's girlfriend. Together they had devised a plan, according to which Stefan would lose his head over the young beauty, and then they would set up a situation in which Stefan would sign the necessary papers and go to prison, and Nick would take his place. Who else could take over the firm? He's the second in command. Stephen uncovered the plans of the criminal couple quite by accident. Of course, Stephen never worked another day for him after that. And Kira was the hardest part. I didn't want to believe she was faking it. Her meek smile, her loving gaze, her hugs and kisses were all lies. Stefan searched for excuses for his lover, but found none. Everything pointed to her being a despicable traitor, even if it didn't fit the image that had formed in Stefan's head. Of course, they broke up. Kira tried to stay close to Stefan. She apologized, blamed it on Stephen, swore her love and loyalty. It took a huge effort for Stefan not to believe her again. As it turned out, it was a wise decision, because leaving Kira in her heart told the young man a lot of unpleasant and hurtful words. It was painful to see the once favored beautiful face curved with a malicious grin. After this sad story, Stefan stopped trusting girls, and he never dreamed of a new serious relationship. In his life, he still had short-term, non-committal romances. Everything was fair and clear there, but Stefan did not make any far-reaching plans. The man was satisfied with his real life, the center of which was, of course, work, a favorite job that would never betray or hurt him. Amelie was sad about that. Do you want a wife? Kids? Amélie listed. Are you planning to live your whole life alone? It's good now, but when you're old, it's uncomfortable. You'll be cold. But you can't change anything. It's up to me. Stefan tried to avoid the conversation. I'm surprised at myself. Amélie sighed. My parents used to push me to marry, to hurry me to have children. I didn't understand them then. I thought, why are they meddling in my life? And now I'm saying the same words to you. It's strange. And so everything went on as usual. Amélie enjoyed her freedom after a well-deserved vacation. She had a wonderful company, a couple of former colleagues and a neighbor. The women were all the same age. They went to theaters and cafes, just walked in the park, even traveled. Stefan was glad that his mother's life was not limited to soap operas and sitting on the bench in front of the entrance. But a few more years passed, and the man noticed that his mother's behavior began to change. At first, she simply forgot the words, began to tell something, and suddenly stopped talking, unable to continue the phrase. Stefan didn't see anything wrong with that. It happens to everyone. But Amélie was more and more often lost in the dialogues, confused and flapping her eyes. Then the old woman began to forget and confuse important facts of her own biography. It got to the point where she was seriously convincing her son that she had studied to be a chef. Stefan knew very well that his mother had graduated from a pedagogical university. Her friend and neighbor Kate was a chef. She had talked many times about her studies and her work. Here in his mother's head, apparently, and mixed up the facts of her own life and the story of her neighbor. All this could not but alarm Stefan. Moreover, his mother's friends periodically called him with disturbing news. The man signed up Amélie for a consultation with a renowned professor. The diagnosis was disappointing. Alzheimer's is a terrible, irreversible disease that gradually progresses and takes away the most important thing from a person, his personality. You can try to slow down the progression of the disease, the doctor explained to the worried Stefan. But it is impossible to stop it altogether. Of course, Stefan didn't believe the provincial professor's words at first. What could he know, sitting in this hole? Medicine is advancing by leaps and bounds. Surely there is a way to save his mother, to snatch her from the clutches of the insidious disease. So the man put aside all his business and rushed to Amélie's rescue. He took her to the most advanced centers of the country, contacted with foreign luminaries of medicine, appealed even to doctors practicing unconventional methods of treatment. All in vain. The disease continued to progress. Doctors were unanimous in their opinion. Amélie had a particularly severe case of the disease. The elderly woman almost did not respond to therapy. The disease developed rapidly. No medications or medical manipulations were able to slow down the process significantly. It was hard to realize her powerlessness. Stefan had money, connections, and opportunities, but none of that mattered in this situation. Amélie gradually withdrew into her own world, but there were moments of enlightenment when her eyes suddenly became as they had been before, aware, loving, attentive. Unfortunately, it happened less and less often. Stefan looked forward to such moments, to talk to his mother again. He missed her, the old Amélie. But most of the time his mother was now a complete stranger, healthy, childishly capricious, completely unadapted to life and living. Amélie required care and constant supervision. Stefan wanted to move her to his place closer to Paris, but she fiercely opposed. "You want to kick me out of my house and take my apartment for yourself?" Angrily whispered. She looked at her son. The old woman clearly did not recognize Stefan. She saw in the most dear person an enemy. "You'll never make it. Get out, bastard, before I call the police." But with her friends, who continued to visit and support her, Amélie behaved very differently. The old woman suddenly decided that they were her sisters, and she didn't want to leave them. Stefan had to move in with his mother himself. He watched her day and night, because she could easily leave the gas and water on, knock over a cupboard, drink, or eat something completely inedible. It was hard both mentally and physically. It was exhausting, taking up all his energy and time. Stefan couldn't work properly. No, sometimes he had to go to the capital. One of her friends looked after Amélie. But Stefan couldn't take advantage of her friend's kindness. He understood how difficult it was to look after a sick person for 24 hours a day. Amélie still refused to move closer to her son. He couldn't drag her away by force. Even when she was healthy, she didn't like Paris. How will she accept a huge metropolis now that her psyche is so unstable? Doctors unanimously stated that it would be a huge stress for their patient, which would certainly provoke a setback in her condition. The only other option was a caregiver, but even here it was not so simple. She didn't like the professional caregiver Stefan had brought to her mother. Amélie was not shy in explaining her refusal. Stefan was embarrassed in front of these women, but they all understood the situation. He was desperate. For months he lived in his mother's apartment, looking after her day and night. In Paris, he had an accumulation of cases that required his participation and attention. The man did not even imagine how and when he would sort it all out. The well-being of his company, grown from a small firm, was threatened. There was no way out. Mother cannot be left alone. Caregivers she does not accept, and even afraid, beyond the doorstep they are not allowed. In the clinic, to lie down categorically refuses. The way out was found by herself. One day Amélie returned from a walk in a good mood. Stefan had just been working, taking advantage of a few hours of freedom. One of his mother's friends, the faithful Kate, had given him a break. She lived nearby and often went for walks with Amélie. Stefan was immensely grateful to her for that. He opened the door with a smile to the two elderly women, his mother and her friend. Immediately he saw that both of them were almost glowing with joy. "What happened?" Stefan said with a smile. "We found a nurse for Amélie," Kate answered. Amélie, who was standing next to her, nodded. "How did you find her?" The man didn't understand. "On the street." You could say that Kate smiled. "There's just one little thing about it," Kate said, "literally a little thing. But don't dismiss it out of hand, because Amélie agreed to it. Can you imagine she chased everyone away, and now she's agreed to it?" "Tell me," Stefan said. "I'm intrigued." It turned out that the old women had met Trixie in the courtyard. She was walking with her son, a charming little boy of 3. Kate called him a little nuance. Amélie immediately penetrated to the boy, treated him to candy, chatted with him about this and that. Meanwhile, Kate was chatting with the child's mother, as she usually did with such chance encounters. "I told Trixie everything," Kate admitted. "About my problem. A close friend that we've been inseparable all our lives is in this state right now. Doesn't remember much. Often imagines herself as someone else, acts like a child." Trixie, the new acquaintance's name, nodded sadly. It turns out she had first-hand knowledge of Alzheimer's disease. The disease had made her once strong and energetic great-uncle a helpless and unstable man. Trixie shared her story as well, and Kate was at first horrified at what this young mother had to endure. And then there was a saving thought, a solution to a lot of problems at once. "Trixie is very young, younger than you," Kate said. "We've been through more hardships than any grown woman can handle. She's lived in the country all her life. She finished school there and came to the city to study economics. She was glad that she entered the university on her own, without connections and without money. She studied hard. I got a diploma, got a job in a small firm. I rented an apartment, supported myself. And she was very proud of it." Trixie said she'd always wanted to escape poverty. In the village, her family was poor, to put it mildly. She shared a cramped room with her 2 younger sisters and brother. Money was always in short supply. The girl had to work part-time from the age of 11 on the local farm. They did not starve, of course, but Trixie could only dream of beautiful clothes, technology, travel. The furnishings of the house were not pleasing to the eye, either peeling wallpaper, shabby ceilings, old furniture falling apart. Trixie wanted to live differently and thought that hard study would help her to change her fate. That's why she spent all her free time working on her textbooks. By the way, it was not easy, because as the eldest daughter, Trixie had a lot of household duties to clean the rooms, clean the yard, cook dinner, look after the younger ones. There wasn't much in the way of study facilities either. The only desk was always full of children's paints, plasticine, toys. The younger ones were always pushing around, making noise, distracting her with questions. Sometimes Trixie would climb into the attic with her textbooks and sit there, listening to the muffled sounds from below. It wasn't completely silent here either, but the attic was still the best place to study. Unlike her peers, Trixie didn't go to dances in the neighboring village or go out with boys. She listened, of course, to her friends' stories about their romantic adventures. Sometimes it was even interesting, like watching a movie or reading a novel. But for herself, the girl firmly decided first study, career, and then you can think about a personal life. It reminds me of my mother's fate, Stefan nodded. Mom was also from a village and from a large family. She also wanted to get back on her feet. She didn't care about her personal life. Did you notice that too? Kate smiled. Of course, I saw the resemblance right away. And Amelie wasn't just taking care of Trixie's baby. She was listening to her story with interest. I could see she liked the girl. And I liked Trixie too, modest, quiet, sincere. So Trixie graduated from the village school with honors and entered the university. She was given a dormitory and a scholarship. The years of hard study began. Studying was hard, but Trixie loved it. She took complex formulas and theorems as a challenge and always won in the end. During her student years, Trixie didn't pay much attention to guys either. She was a pretty girl, slim, tall, with elegant, huge green eyes, long hair the color of ripe wheat, a wonderful honey-colored skin tone. Trixie is still a beauty. Amelie smiled. It was the first time she had entered into a conversation since returning home. Beautiful, though life had not treated her well. But she'll be all right now. Yes, Trixie is a very attractive young woman, Kate confirmed her friend's words. And of course, when she was a student, she had her admirers. But the girl had made up her mind to finish university and get on her feet first, and then think about love, and went to her goal. Her friends offered Trixie other options to get a foothold in the city and live far from poor, to find a wealthy man and decide him. Only such methods were not for Trixie. She wanted to be sure of her well-being. And how can you be sure of it if your well-fed life depends on another man? Anyway, after graduating from university with honors, Trixie started looking for a job. And she found it almost immediately. She got a job as a labor economist in a local successful firm that installs air conditioners. The salary offered to the young specialist was decent, especially if to compare it with the scholarship, on which Trixie had to survive all these years. After all, there was nothing to count on the help of relatives. Her parents barely made ends meet. On the contrary, her mother and father had managed to instill in their eldest daughter that she owed it to them, that she had to support the family when she made it in the world. After all, they had raised her. Trixie supported them at first. She bought presents for the younger ones, transferred money to her mother's card. But when she needed help herself, the family turned away from her. Trixie, a young and very pretty employee, was immediately noticed by Ben, a senior manager of the purchasing department and the son of the owner of the company. The young man, of course, felt like a prince in the office. In fact, he was a prince. Ben had been surrounded by luxury since he was a child. He was used to the fact that all his wishes were always fulfilled. By the time he was 26, the guy had a beautiful life. He wanted something new, something unexplored. And then Trixie got a job with them, a modest beauty with huge eyes and a sharp mind. Of course, it wasn't her looks that interested the young man. No, he had dated both models and actresses. A pretty face was not going to catch him. Rather, he was attracted by the special charm of the young new employee. Her behavior, atypical of most girls, intrigued Ben. He wanted to solve Trixie's mystery, to understand her, to get to know her better. That's why he went on the offensive. And Trixie? She was just at the age when it was time to think about a soulmate. Most of her acquaintances were already married and raising children, and she wanted family happiness too. All the more Trixie thought that she had already achieved a lot. She had studied, worked, and supported herself. Trixie was tired of making her way through life alone. She dreamed of a close person, drew an image of a man to talk to in the evening, who would embrace her after a hard day's work. That's where Ben came in. He was very skillfully courting a young female employee. You bet the guy was a pro at it. Flowers, nice surprises, exquisite compliments, admiring glances. Ben knew how to surprise any girl, and was proud of the fact that he could find an approach to everyone. But he'd never met anyone like Trixie before. It was not an easy task, but it was even more interesting. In the end, of course, Ben managed to make Trixie fall in love with him. They started dating. The girl didn't realize that Ben was the son of the owner of the firm. If she had, she might have been more careful. Then she realized it, of course, colleagues at work, noticing that Trixie began a relationship with Ben, told her who his father was. But it was too late. Trixie had fallen head over heels in love. The girl could not imagine her life without Ben. He actually lived in her apartment, and Trixie was completely satisfied with it. The young people had been together for about 2 years. Probably Ben really had strong feelings for Trixie. Before, his affairs had lasted 6 months at the most. But here Ben wanted to take care of someone for the first time in his life. That's what Trixie had taught him, by the way. She cooked him delicious meals, took interest in his affairs and well-being, and didn't demand anything in return. On the contrary, when Ben gave her something, the girl was very touchingly embarrassed. Of course, the father eventually learned about his son's affair. At first, the man did not attach much importance to it. Ben was young, in love, well-to-do. The flighty young man was living his lifestyle. The wise father allowed his son to enjoy his youth, because he realized that if he didn't get used up in his youth, he would strive to go out all his life, all in due time. But the news that Ben had a serious relationship made him tense. It wasn't the right choice. A poor country girl with no family. She's probably hitting on the son of wealthy parents on purpose. She wants to take any chance she can to escape poverty. There are plenty of people like Trixie. But Ben is not a means to her ends. Ben, a young fool in love, doesn't realize he's being used. He says something about her purity and sincerity. He assures her there are no other girls like her in the world. No wonder, because Ben's social circle before he met Trixie was made up of spoiled girls from fairly well-to-do families, fixated on beauty, luxury, and entertainment. Probably this Trixie was wise beyond her years and realized how to behave to make a young man lose his head. Well, good for her, she did it well. Except she didn't take one thing into account. Ben has a father who won't let his son make a fatal mistake. The man decided to send Ben on an internship abroad. Out of sight, out of mind. The father knew his son well. Ben would have a new love there, then a second, then a third. Nothing at Trixie will work out, and it is necessary to act quickly, because such a clever girl to consolidate the effect may well get pregnant. And then she will have a powerful lever to siphon money from a rich family with the help of a child. It's a plan as old as time, but it's still as effective as ever. Anyway, Ben flew away across the ocean. Kate continued the story. Amélie listened attentively to her friend and shook her head. In her eyes, she clearly read pity for the main character of the story, Trixie. Just like in the Carlson cartoon. He flew away, but he promised to come back. He didn't, Amélie said. Just as the wise parent expected, Ben met the next girl of his dreams across the ocean and decided to stay by her side. His father even helped his son start a small business in another country so that he could support himself and his new lover. The man always backed up the only child, did everything to make his life bright, trouble-free, happy. But Trixie had no one to help her. The girl, unlike Ben, very soon found herself in a desperate situation. Soon after the departure of her beloved, Trixie suddenly realized that she was expecting a child. They did not plan to have children yet, so the news did not become for Trixie joyful. On the contrary, the girl felt fear Ben wasn't around and wouldn't be for a long time. The internship was planned to be long, so necessary for Ben's career. Trixie understood, but still felt pain and longing in her soul, not seeing her own face for so long, and then Ben had deleted himself from everyone's social media. Explained that it was work-related. The connection with him was almost cut off. Trixie felt abandoned and alone. She really missed her lover. The girl even began to save her paycheck, money for a trip to the city where Ben now lived and worked. And suddenly such news. Pregnancy, and the term was not small. Trixie hadn't noticed the obvious signs in time, too caught up in her longing for Ben. She blamed the malaise on stress, the delay, hormone imbalances. It had happened to her before. She hadn't expected to see 2 bright stripes on the drugstore test she'd bought just in case. The next morning, Trixie went to the doctor. I don't know if the test was wrong. Trixie was sent to the ultrasound, where it turned out that she was already in the 2nd trimester of pregnancy. The future mother was even told the sex of the baby, a boy. It took Trixie a long time to get used to the idea, and she didn't even think about abortion. First of all, it was too late. Secondly, even if the term allowed, she would never get rid of this child. Trixie already loved him, and loved him with all her soul. Too bad there's no way to contact Ben. He has no idea he's about to become a father. Surely Ben will be happy when he finds out they're having a boy, Most guys dream of having sons. Trixie didn't know, and couldn't have known, that at this time her favorite man was already courting his future wife. A beautiful girl from a wealthy family, the union with which the boy's father entirely approved. No, Ben genuinely loved Trixie when they were together. The lad was quite honest about that, but his father was right about his son. The guy was characterized by his windiness and carelessness and couldn't stay alone for long. Trixie didn't know what to do, how to contact Ben. He wasn't on social media now. The guy's phone wasn't answering. He must have had to change his number. Strange that he hadn't warned her. Even weirder that he didn't call her himself. One day the girl plucked up her courage and went to the central office to see Ben's father. If anyone could tell her the truth about him, it was only him. It was not an easy step to take, but Trixie had no choice. Time was running out and the due date was fast approaching. It was impossible to survive on maternity pay. It was barely enough money for a rented house. And the baby needs a father, needs a family man around from the first days of life. Trixie can't handle a baby alone. So one sunny June morning, Trixie went to the office of the boss and owner of the firm where she worked to meet Ben's father. Upon seeing him, Trixie's stomach was already showing. The man had figured it out, Kate pronounced. He spoke to the girl rudely and ugly. He said right off the bat that she wasn't the first. Allegedly, she was pregnant by his son, and that he'd met dozens like her. He said that his son was in the middle of wedding preparations in another country, and that Ben wasn't coming back. When Trixie said they could do a DNA test, so there was no doubt about it, the man got angry. He thought Trixie was threatening him and said that if that test proved the child's parentage to Ben, he would condemn the grandchild and raise him himself. And Trixie would go back where she came from, back to her country hole. Anyway, Trixie left the office with nothing. She took a long time to digest the news she'd learned from Ben's boss he was getting ready to get married. Wow, how quickly he'd forgotten her. It was painful and hurtful, but Trixie had no time to sign. She had a lot of issues to solve, to find a cheaper apartment, to buy everything she needed for the baby, to put aside money for the first time, because she wouldn't be able to work for a few months. She had to survive in the conditions that fate offered. Ben's family would not even think about recognizing the child. The chief had made it clear, if anything, he would condemn the baby, and he would certainly succeed. He's got money, power, connections on his side. Trixie was no match for such a man. Trixie decided to stay out of the sight of such men. She was afraid of Ben's father now. She dreaded the prospect of being without the son she had grown to love with all her soul. Soon Trixie was hit with a new misfortune. She was fired. She was dismissed as a pregnant woman under the article incompatibility with her position. With such an entry in her labor book, and even with a small child in her arms, no employer will definitely not hire her. Ben's father was probably taking revenge on the one who had caused him so much trouble. Trixie had to rent a tiny room on the outskirts of the city and work unofficially as a cleaner until the birth. She couldn't have gotten another job anyway. Pregnant, and with such a record in her employment book, Trixie had a small financial safety cushion. The money she'd been saving for a trip to see her lover, but it had run out 3 months after little Edward was born. So Trixie went back to scrubbing driveways. She carried the baby in a carrier, carrying him from floor to floor to floor, down corridors, platforms, stairs, and at the same time singing lullabies or telling Edward stories. It was hard, but there was no other way out. The family, of course, didn't help Trixie's predicament. On the contrary, she received more reproaches than from Ben's father. She was called a disgrace to the family. Trixie, in dire need of support, was hurt to tears to hear these words. Her parents made it clear that she had disappointed them. They had hoped that their daughter would become a great person, help the family financially. And everything was going that way at first, and she dared to get into such a situation. Then the baby grew up, and it got easier, Kate continued. Edward is such a bright, serious little boy. He's just a baby. He helps his mother with everything. Trixie could work more now, and earn more money. So she and her son moved here from a bad neighborhood. Trixie rented a better apartment and continues to work as a cleaner, and at the same time is studying for a programmer on some free program. She's unlikely to be hired as an economist now, after this entry in her labor record. And there are more opportunities to earn money as a programmer. So Trixie's doing her best for her son. But it's hard for her to clean the entrances and study. You can see how tired she is. We feel sorry for her, Amelie. We're good judges of character. We knew right away that Trixie was kind and honest. But she'd had some bad luck in life. That's an amazing story. Stefan shook his head. Can we make a movie about Trixie's life? You don't know the most important thing, Kate smiled mysteriously. Your mom Amelie suggested a wonderful thing. She asked Trixie if she would be her nurse. She offered. Stefan wondered. She's good at it. I didn't realize it right away. I couldn't think of a better option. Trixie is honest, kind, and attentive. She'll talk to Amelie and remind her to take her medicine on time. And she's gentle, kind, smiling. And she has a good boy. She and Amelie hit it off right away. Amelie is like a child sometimes. They'll have fun together. Old boy Kate nodded. And Trixie, instead of scrubbing floors, will study in peace and look after your mother. It doesn't take much physical labor, and it doesn't take much time. And you'll offer her a good salary, of course. With what? See how good that makes everyone feel. Kate's eyes brightened up. She thought it was a wonderful idea. Amelie also thought it was a good idea. But Stefan was still hesitant to let a complete stranger from the street into the house. I don't know what she'd told the two old ladies. Maybe Trixie was a liar, but she had decided to give the old ladies a good talking to, and they didn't know what was what. How smart is it to fool old ladies, one of whom has such a serious illness? But I need to meet Trixie. Ask her a few questions, talk things over. She's going to work now, but she'll come by tonight, Kate said. I've got an 8 o'clock appointment with her. So wait, Trixie promised she'd come by. I'm sure you'll like her. The doorbell rang around 8. Stefan opened it. A young woman stood on the doorstep. Slim, pale, with a tired face but a shy smile. By the hand she held a little boy. Here he looked quite happy and confident. He smiled broadly at Stefan, looking him straight in the eyes. The man felt warm inside. This child was quite charming. Hello, the woman said. I'm Trixie. You've probably heard about me, haven't you? I'm here for a job interview. Come in, Stefan said with a reassuring smile, and let the guests into the apartment. All three of them settled in the living room. Amelie, having taken another dose of medication, slept in her room. She would sleep until about 9 o'clock. Then 2 hours awake, her medication, and then back to sleep, Stefan explained. Amelie has a difficult schedule and a very complex character, corrected by her illness. Not any caregiver could cope with her. I can barely manage myself. But Kate was confident Trixie could do it. I know your story, Stefan said, looking at Trixie. Her son was looking around with lively curiosity. Stefan liked having a child in the apartment. Somehow it made him feel lighter. Good, Trixie nodded. So you understand how much I need this job. I'll do my best not to disappoint you. Amelie and I have hit it off, Stefan smiled. It was surprising, because she had rejected so many professional caregivers. All of them had something wrong with her. Did she take to you right away? I think she's a wonderful, kind person, Trixie shrugged. I'm glad you think so. Mom has a very special schedule. She has to be on a strict regimen, taking her pills by the hour, or her condition will worsen. I also read to her twice a day, the first time a newspaper with news, the second time something from the classics she chooses. I see, I've already mapped out Mom's day for you. Can we start tomorrow? You're really taking me? A smile lit up Trixie's pretty face. Just like that. Stefan grinned. Two old ladies have made me such a spectacular advertisement. Trixie laughed. You see, that's the thing. I don't know if you realize that the baby will be living here with me, of course. With you and my mother. Stefan said calmly. That's out of the question. Thank you. The young woman's eyes expressed gratitude. I think she almost cried. Perhaps fate had treated her unfairly. If Trixie is so happy about this job, it's not easy to look after someone with such a disease. Trixie knows what she's getting into, and she's still excited about it. Trixie and the baby showed up the next morning. They didn't have much with them, just a couple of backpacks and a small travel bag. Good morning, Stefan smiled. You're just in time. Make yourself comfortable, get settled in. Mom will be up in an hour. I've written out her day in detail. He put the sheet on the kitchen table. Good, Trixie nodded. Oh, and if you need anything, call me any time of the day or night. I'm leaving for the local office right now. Now I finally have time for a full-time job. I'm staying here in my old apartment for a couple days. Of course. I'll visit you every night. I'll see how you're doing, and if all goes well, I'll go back to New York, but I'll stay in touch with you, of course. Yes, I see. Trixie smiled. Everything will be fine, don't even doubt it. And things did get better. Stefan, who was still in his hometown for a couple days, made sure Trixie was doing fine. Amelie looked happy. She was in an elevated mood the whole time. She liked both Trixie and her adorable baby boy. Trixie was happy too. This job is a gift from heaven and a reward for all my toil and suffering, she told Stefan more than once. It's a pleasure to look after your mother. We talk a lot. She sometimes recalls stories from her life, and it's interesting to hear about her years as a teacher. Amelie is very intelligent and sensitive, and she and Edward are very good friends. They can play together for hours, they can build constructors or draw something. It's good that everything is so wonderful. Stefan was genuinely happy. The apartment was now cozy, warm, and somehow attractive. Stefan came in the evenings to visit Amelie and ask Trixie how things were going, and then he didn't want to leave at all. But Stefan couldn't stay either. It would probably embarrass Trixie. Everything's great, Trixie smiled. Amelie and I are walking, reading, talking, even cooking together. Turns out she remembers a lot of recipes by heart. True, she can't always retrieve them from memory, but the insights happen while she and Edward play or draw. I study quietly. I can't tell you how grateful I am for this offer. It's a lifesaver for Edward and me. I'm grateful to you, Stefan replied sincerely. You make my mom's life happy, and you give me my freedom. I have to get back to New York. I have so much to do there. Stefan flew home with a peaceful heart. Immediately, he was overwhelmed by a mountain of problems. The business had gone too long without the owner's close attention. Stefan plunged headlong into work. The rubble was gradually getting smaller. Even breathing became easier. Every evening he called Trixie via video link. She would tell Stefan how his mother's days were going. Sometimes Amelie would come to the screen herself. Sometimes she recognized her son, other times she didn't. It was scary and painful. It must be impossible to get used to. Despite the treatment, the disease progressed. To top it all off, there were heart problems. Strong drugs had side effects on the whole body, but you couldn't do without them. Trixie took Amelie to the hospital, gave her pills by the hour, put her to bed on time, and looked after her. She seemed to genuinely feel sorry for the elderly woman who had suffered such a serious illness. Trixie helped Kate. Sometimes she was joined by other friends who lived farther away. All of them, like Amelie, had also grown to love Trixie and her son. Stefan rejoiced. He loved that his mom had an interesting and busy life. Doctors unanimously said that positive emotions can slow down the development of the disease. One day a man named Stefan looked forward to those evening conversations with Trixie all day long. She was a remarkably bright and friendly person. As soon as she said a few words to him, he felt light and calm at heart. Trixie energized him with positivity and energy. She was also, without a doubt, a real beauty. Her eyes the color of birch bark, like two blue lakes, shone on her beautiful face. Now Stefan involuntarily compared the women around him. Many of them were good-looking, but they were spoiled by their haughty appearance, their deliberate capriciousness, their coldness, or, on the contrary, their excessive imposition. Trixie, on the other hand, was natural, lively, real, and incredibly kind. Stefan was glad to have such a person in his life. Sometimes the man came to his hometown of Houston to visit his mother. Now he always brought Edward gifts. It was so nice to choose cars, radio-controlled toys, robots, constructors and children's stores. It turned out that there were so many interesting toys now. It was even more joyful to see the boys' eyes light up with delight. Then they worked out together how to control another machine and what actions can be performed by a cool robot. That was interesting too. Edward was really reaching out to Stefan. He must have missed the attention of a boy. Stefan understood Edward perfectly well. He was in the same situation himself, and so he tried to talk to him more during his visits. Trixie always prepared a festive dinner the night before Stefan arrived. The woman even involved Ami's grandmother in the preparation. She read on the internet that such activities are useful for people with her disease. Patients need to do some household chores for as long as possible, otherwise the disease progresses quickly and they become completely helpless. Stefan enjoyed talking to Trixie, not only about her mother, but about the life of this amazing woman herself. And Trixie seemed genuinely interested in Stefan's affairs. Sitting in the living room, they could talk for hours on end about everything, and nothing at the same time. Little Edward would pop up every now and then and insert his own lines, which both adults laughed lightheartedly at. Stefan loved those evenings with all his soul. Each time he wanted to stay in Houston longer, but business required his direct involvement. So the man returned to New York. One day, Stefan's former classmate Tom, who for a long time had been almost the man's only best friend, invited him to a wedding. Tom did not go anywhere, so he stayed to live in his hometown. He opened his own business here, in which he was very successful. Stefan repeatedly called him to New York, drawing him tantalizing prospects. But Tom always replied that he was fine at home. He wasn't attracted to the capital, so Tom got married. They decided to have a large-scale celebration with hired artists, a spectacular show program, dancing until morning, and of course he invited Stefan to the party. He of course agreed, put aside all his business, and came to his hometown. He was excited about the upcoming celebration and the opportunity to visit his mother and Trixie. On the eve of the celebration, Tom called Stefan and shocked him with the news. "You see, friend, you don't have to come to the wedding alone, but with a girl." Why is that? Stefan wondered. Tom had never made such a demand before. Here's the thing. One of DG's relatives won't be able to make it. It's an urgent business trip. It's an influential person. But his spouse is going, and he's only letting her go on condition that all the men are with the ladies. Jealous. Otherwise he won't let his wife go. Now that's a tough patriarchy. Stefan stretched out. It's commonplace here in the province, so far, Tom joked. Not like what you've got up there in New York. Where am I going to find a girl? Stefan stretched out confusedly. I don't have anyone right now. Call one of ours over there. Kira, she's kind of divorced. I don't think anyone would mind going to a party with you. I mean, it's just a formality. Okay, I'll think of something. Stefan agreed. Don't worry, I'll be there as agreed. Pressing the reset button, the man thought for a moment. Why are you upset? Emily asked. Stefan flinched. His mother had been sitting next to him during the conversation, but she looked absent. It seemed to him that she was in her own world again. But Amelie seemed to have heard and understood everything this time. Tom says I should bring a girl to his wedding. I don't have anyone in mind. What do you mean, you don't? The old woman was surprised. Well, Trixie, invite her. It's good for her to get away. Trixie. But of course, as Stefan hadn't guessed right away, thinking about spending the whole day with her at such a lavish celebration, the man rejoiced. It was going to be a wonderful time. Trixie flushed to the roots of her hair when she heard Stefan's proposal. I don't know, she said. I don't feel comfortable. And Amelie and Edward. You can't leave them alone all day. Don't worry about Kate taking care of the family. I'll make arrangements with her, so I'll do it. Of course, Trixie said, smiling. It's probably been ages since I've been anywhere. Let's make up for it. Please, Stefan said. I'll be ready by 10 tomorrow, and I'll pick you up. In the morning, a complete stranger, Trixie, jumped out of the driveway. Stefan had never seen her like this before. She wore a flowing dress of a lovely emerald hue that suited her eyes. It fitted her slender figure beautifully, the wide satin hemline emphasizing her slim waist. The belt emphasized her slim waist, and her wrist was adorned with massive bracelets of dark green stones. All of these things Trixie had rented from her daughter Kate. Trixie's hair, usually gathered in a ponytail or a bundle, fell loosely over her shoulders. It was adorned with light curls. Trixie looked like a mermaid in this image, enchanting, beautiful, ethereal beauty. Trixie made light makeup, tinted her eyelashes, applied light pink lipstick on her lips. It all emphasized the natural beauty of her face. Stefan looked at Trixie admiringly. He didn't want to take his eyes off her. Yes, he had always seen that she was beautiful, but today he was still amazed. At the sight of this marvel you are. You look absolutely marvelous, Stefan said. He couldn't find the words to express his impressions of what he had seen. Thank you, Trixie smiled. And surprisingly, she didn't look embarrassed. As usual, she didn't avert her eyes. They pulled up in front of the old registry office. It was the only place in their town where marriages were registered. Parking was hard to find. Tom had warned them that there would be a lot of guests. Stefan took Trixie's hand and led her past the dressed-up people to the right hall. Periodically, the man said hello to someone he knew, but didn't stop to talk to them. He would have time for that. Right now, he didn't want to disturb the idyll. He walked with Trixie through the crowd and held her hand in his. People were looking at them, whispering. Stefan saw it and heard it, and to his feelings was added one more, the pride of having such a gorgeous beauty, a real mermaid, by his side. Trixie was looking around with interest. It was obvious that she liked everything that was going on. Then, finally, Stefan saw Tom. He looked very organic and effective in the role of the groom. Next to him stood the beautiful DG in an obviously expensive ivory dress. Stefan knew her. She was a girl from their court. They had once considered her a boy, since she was 2 or 3 years younger. And now DG becomes Tom's spouse. Congratulations, buddy. Stefan hugged his friend. He had to let go of Trixie's hand to do so. Thank you. And you too. Tom whispered to him. Your lady of the heart. She's beautiful. Why did you lie to me yesterday about not having a boyfriend? You two obviously adore each other. Really? Stefan was surprised. Do you think so? I don't think so, Tom smiled. And then there was a solemn registration of the marriage, a traditional trip with a photographer to the local sites and monuments. People were having fun and socializing. One by one, bottles of champagne were opened. Trixie immediately made friends with the bride. They joked merrily with each other and exchanged friendly remarks. The man relaxed for the first time in a long time. Tense work, problems with suppliers, anxious thoughts about his mother's rapidly deteriorating health, all of this had receded somewhere. He was having fun with his friends, laughing at the jokes of others and joking himself, enjoying the closeness of his beautiful companion. And she, it seemed, also felt in a pair with him organically and naturally. The first part of the wedding was over, and everyone went to the restaurant. There, the guests were waiting for a luxurious show program, a good host, spectacular numbers, dances, contests, delicious snacks. The man and his companion danced a lot. The girl moved quite gracefully and relaxed, certainly leading the dance. It was easy and pleasant to adjust to her movements. He did not like and could not dance, but he could not refuse his beautiful lady. The day flew by. It got dark outside the windows, but the holiday was not going to end yet. It was time for the next key moment of the celebration, the hunt for the bride's bouquet. All the unmarried were lined up in a row in the center of the hall. The girl did not want to go, but the man gently pushed her towards the others. The bride turned around at the girls, frozen in anticipation, and smiled slyly at them. It seemed to the man that she winked at his companion. And then the bride threw the bouquet to her. The bouquet itself flew into her hands. Applause broke out, and the host asked the man to come out to his lady. He approached the embarrassed girl and took her hand. She looked quite confused, so he put his arm around her waist encouragingly. Well, young man, said the host into the microphone. You see, fate has decreed that your wedding is next. Kiss the bride. The guests around began to applaud, and then also chanted bitter, bitter. You see, there's no other way out, he smiled affectionately at the girl. And he did what he had dreamed of all evening, kissed her. She was at first a little embarrassed in his arms, but then she embraced the man, pressed herself against him, and answered the kiss. Stefan wanted that moment to last forever. But sure enough, after a few moments, Trixie pulled away. She was looking at the man in a kind of frightened way. This is the most beautiful kiss I've ever seen, the host continued to broadcast. Everything is going to be great with you guys. Stefan led Trixie by the hand to the back of the room where there were fewer people. He wanted to say something to her, to cheer her up, to ease the awkwardness after the kiss, but he couldn't find the words. The man was overwhelmed with emotion. He suddenly put his arms around Trixie again and tried to kiss her, but she gently pulled him away. No, Trixie shook her head. You're my employer, I'm a subordinate. I've had an office romance before and I know how it ends. I can't lose this job, do you understand? Stefan nodded. Trixie had a right to distance herself. Only were they really just employers and subordinates. What about their heart-to-heart talks, the companionship that made both of them feel warm? What about that kiss, which Stefan was sure had brought pleasant emotions to her too? What about the hand in his palm? The rest of the evening passed without incident. Trixie was always there for him. She was also smiling at Stefan, taking his hand again. The man admired her, caught her glances and smiles, watched Trixie's graceful movements, and fought the urge to hug and kiss her again. The man realized he was in love. In love for probably the second time in his life. And Trixie seemed to sympathize with him too, but she was afraid. There was too much at stake for her in the event of another mistake. Stefan made no more attempts to hug or kiss Trixie. He was just acting like a good friend again. He didn't want their relationship to lose its ease, its naturalness. Let things go the way they were going. After the party, Stefan took Trixie home in a cab. Thank you for a wonderful evening, the beautiful woman smiled at him as she got out of the car. I'd never been to an event like this before. I guess I felt like Cinderella when I got to the ball. I'm glad you liked it, Stefan nodded. Then the man went back to Chicago. And everything went back to the way it had been. Busy work, evening calls with Trixie, socializing with friends and coworkers. Only now Stefan thought about Trixie all the time. He remembered her green eyes shining with delight, her hair flowing down her back, the warmth of her palm in his hand. And of course he often returned to that kiss in front of the crowd of guests. That kiss had changed many things. It had made Stefan realize that he was really in love with Trixie, and there was no use in resisting that fact, and no reason to lie to himself. Except Trixie was afraid of getting burned again, and was holding on to her job very tightly. She had already had a situation in her life, when an affair with the boss's son had hurt her and ruined all her plans. Of course, the woman didn't want to repeat, especially since Trixie was now responsible not only for herself, but for Edward as well. But did she really think Stefan was capable of such meanness, that he could do to her what her old boss or his son had done to her? During the conversation over the video link, Trixie was on her usual behavior. She was friendly, cheerful, and smiled a lot. True, she'd been giving Stefan a lot of unhappy news lately. Amelia's condition was worsening. And it wasn't even about the main diagnosis Trixie shared. Everything was going more or less smoothly. The old woman was managing to look after herself. Her speech was still intact. Although the doctors had predicted that would have happened a long time ago, her heart was a concern. This morning she had another attack. I called an ambulance. They came, gave her a shot. I asked what to do to help her, how to relieve her condition. Because this is the third attack in a month. But they answered the same as always, what do you want? Age. Nobody lives forever. That's the answer, Stefan said. I'll get her into the cardiology center in New York. He felt sorry for his mom, who was clearly agonizing and suffering. He was also worried about Trixie. Stefan remembered well the indifference of the local doctors and their attitude toward elderly patients. And his heart was also gripped by fear of losing the person he loved the most. No, he understood, of course, that nothing lasts forever under the moon, but he was not ready to part with his mother right now. Stefan managed to get a consultation with a famous professor cardiologist. He won a place for his mother in the best cardiac center in the country and rented a special car for transportation of elderly and seriously ill patients. All this cost him some labor and took time. As it turned out later, there was almost no time. Even later, after the worst of it had happened, Stefan had chastised himself for dealing with all these issues instead of spending his last days with his mother. Trixie soothed him, hugging him, stroking his head like a little boy. Yeah, you're right, of course. How could you have known it would happen like this? I mean, you hoped for the best and did everything you could to get your mom fixed. It didn't work. Not in time, she said. When everything was almost ready to move Amelie to New York, Stefan received a phone call from Trixie at an odd hour. The man immediately knew he was in trouble. Usually they communicated in the evenings, and then suddenly there was a call in the morning. Something had obviously happened. "Amélie's in intensive care," Trixie said in a broken voice. It was obvious she could barely contain her sobs. She'd gotten sick last night. "I thought it was another attack, called the ambulance, and there was a heart attack. She's in serious condition, owning intensive care. So we can't move her. We can only rely on the professionalism of the local doctors." Stefan wanted to fly home, to sit by his sick mother's bed, to talk to her. But Trixie said that Amélie was in a coma, and there was no need for an emergency visit. Stefan obeyed Trixie. He finished all the important things at work. Immediately after that, he packed up and went to his hometown. The man lived here for about a week, stayed in his apartment. It was hard for him to return to the house, where his mom was not there now. And he didn't want to see Trixie. She shouldn't have seen him so upset, so scared, so helpless. The man had been in touch with the doctors the whole time. He'd procured the necessary medications and even equipment for her mom, constantly inquired about her well-being, brought the best doctors to the hospital. But Amélie's condition, despite all these efforts, remained stably serious. And then suddenly that call at 6 in the morning. Yes, Stefan understood that his mother was between life and death for a week, but to the last he hoped for a favorable outcome. He believed, like a child, in a miracle. The doctor's words that morning came as a surprise and a heavy blow to the man. Through the pain, tears, and despair, another, seemingly inappropriate thought took shape in his head. What about Trixie? After all we had in common was Amélie. Now that Mom is gone, Trixie and little Edward will be out of my life too. The realization made Stefan feel even more painful. On that day, he found the strength to go home. He had to find some paperwork for the burial. Trixie threw herself around his neck, hugged him tightly, and sobbed. "I'm going to miss her so much," she sobbed. Stefan cried too. He felt neither shame nor embarrassment. He was saying aloud what was tormenting him: his own guilt for not saving his mother in time, and his regret for not being with her the last few days before the heart attack. Trixie calmed the man down, made logical arguments, found the right words. 3 days flew by. The funeral, the wake, settling a mass of legalities, and the agony of getting used to the idea that Amélie was gone and would never be again. Trixie was there for him, helping, supporting. For Edward's sake, Kate had taken him in for the time being. "The boy doesn't need to see all this and have his heart ripped out," she said. "It's too much stress for a young child. Let him stay with me for a while." Trixie and Stefan agreed that it would indeed be best. Then the day came when Trixie packed her things and got ready to move out. She called Stefan and said, "Edward and I are leaving for a rented apartment. Thank you for such a great job and a wonderful time." "I'll leave the keys with Kate," Trixie said. "It was a pleasure to meet you." Stefan didn't know what to say to Trixie. He knew, of course, that she was going to leave now, but he hadn't thought it would happen so quickly. He'd hoped that Trixie and Edward would stay in the apartment, at least until the end of the month. Suddenly they were leaving in such a hurry. The man wanted to beg her to stay, but he only wished her luck in her new place. He was too shocked by everything that was happening. A couple days later, Stefan returned to New York, and there he couldn't stop thinking about Trixie. He missed their evening conversations, wanted to see her smile, hear her voice, look into those bottomless eyes. One day he'd made up his mind, realized he couldn't go on without her, left everything behind, and rushed off to find Trixie and Edward. Stefan decided to start with Kate. She'd had a lot of contact with Trixie. Surely the neighbor would know where Trixie had gone. Stefan had tried to call her, of course, and more than once, but her phone wasn't answering. She'd changed her number or something. Then it turned out Trixie had dropped her phone in a puddle and had to buy a new one. So she decided to get a better tariff. She got a new SIM card. That's why Stefan couldn't reach her. Kate didn't know where to find Trixie, so Stefan had to hire detectives. They quickly tracked down the woman's location. Trixie was once again working as a cleaning lady. Stefan had gotten that information from his people. They even provided him with the girl's work schedule. That's why Stefan found himself at the right moment that morning near her entrance. The man noticed a familiar silhouette from afar. Trixie was coming back from work, walking slowly, enjoying, probably, the beauty of the fresh July morning. Stefan's heart raced. How would she take him now? What if she pushed him away again? What if he'd imagined that she sympathized with him too? Just wishful thinking. Trixie kept getting closer. Stefan stood up and moved toward her. She stopped, recognized him, and suddenly threw herself at him. She hugged him, clung to him, cried. Stefan smiled. Everything was going to be okay now. Trixie was obviously happy for him. "I missed you so much," Trixie finally said. "I was so hoping you'd find me. And you did." I couldn't help it. Stefan smiled at her. His heart heaved with joy. He wasn't wrong. Trixie really loves him. "Remember when you caught the bouquet at the wedding?" he said. "You can't break tradition. How could I not find you after that?"